Okay. After a long time, we are live with something relatively new, a new twist on an old favorite. So I'll go ahead and do a brief introduction here and mention it a couple more times as it comes up. But this is a new category I'm testing out, playing with, called UWC. UWC stands for Unique Weapon Class. It's the shortest way I could come up with this. Basically, it's because the normal game just relies on 4 Swordmasters and the Dancer. You don't see a whole lot of other skills and stuff in it. And I played around with a unique, the single character only, just creating the main character and otherwise using the characters that are available. The big problem with that is, I only get to customize one character, and customizing characters is a lot of the fun of this for me. So I came up with this one as an alternative, which also adds a bit of variety that's not usually seen otherwise anywhere, really. And that is with Unique Weapon Class. This means that I can only use one of each custom weapon, one of each weapon style. I can't use two dancers with Soul of Xianghua or 2 katana wielders, and also I cannot have multiple of the same class. So I can't just use the most powerful people, which kind of is a little bit unnecessary because if I'm not using Swordmasters anyway, the weapon style and the class are a little bit overlapping, and because I'm not going to have the same multiple anyway, if I have to use Samurai aren't really dominant except for the regular katana style, which you'll still see because it's available on Samurai. So it's not like I do for Samurai. Knights have the Soul of Siegfried, but and it's really good, but the other Knight ones aren't super great. Barbarian, I could technically do 2 Barbarians, an Iron Sword and the Soul of Nightmare, which I'm using, because the Iron Sword is a decent style as well, but if I was going to do that, I'd do either Pirate or Knight, who also use Iron Sword and have much better stats than the Barbarian. So there's a couple things I could do, but in general, this really works out regardless. So either unique weapons or unique class with no Swordmasters would give the same general result. But whatever. It kind of feels the need to having a little bit of a slightly challenge run as opposed to what I usually go through. So I've had many requests on my YouTube account, or just one person being very persistent about it, of doing the Final Fantasy V characters customized, which I have done before, but those particular runs did not merit putting on YouTube. So since he was only checking out my YouTube channel, he never saw the Final Fantasy V characters. So I thought, since I'm doing multiple classes, what better way to start off than by doing the Final Fantasy V characters, who of course can job change into various classes or jobs, as they call them in Final Fantasy. So I went ahead and made the party in the order you acquire them. Bart's first, then Lena, then Galuf just after Lena. Pretty much at the same time, but technically you encounter Lena first. Ferris, the easily 4th, and then far distantly Kryl, Galuf's granddaughter. Makes the nice 5-some for the party as well. So Bart's is a dancer, because that's the main class. It's the much easiest to use still with Soul of Xianghua. I could eventually do one no dancer, but that seems a little overly arbitrary. The Swordmaster is a super class, so there's a reason why not to use it, but the dancer is kind of balanced by the fact that it is so weak. Lena is a samurai using the katana, because that's the only class left that can use katana. Not quite as good as the Swordmaster, but they do have even higher attack power, so they'll still be decent. Galuf is barbarian. I chose to do barbarian third. Technically, there is no barbarian in Final Fantasy V, but the Berserker is close enough. Unfortunately, there's no animal head helmet, no wolf head helmet, I should say, available for either male or female in Final Fantasy V. So I went with the compromise and just gave him a Viking helmet instead, because that fits the Berserker/Barbarian motif pretty well. Also lets him show off his beard of awesome. I chose that to be third, even though I kind of like the Soul of Siegfried more because the Barbarian has worse stats, so he will benefit more from being the third person to get a little bit more experience, although it probably is going to be similar. So Ferris then became the Knight, and the fifth, which I'll be using the least, is Kunai, which is still a decent one I've used before in the solo character challenge. Normally she should be a ninja, but I made her an assassin because uses the same weapon style I would want to use and is just basically a ninja plus in Soulcalibur 3 because ninjas are not nearly the superpowered class they are in Final Fantasy V. So that's the explanation of the party. So let's go ahead and sortie. We're both starting, that's right, at 2. It has been a long time since I played, so let's see just how well I remember everything about it and how to go. So let's go ahead and start. So I'm going to be constantly in the red because it's been a while since I played with... I probably should have deleted and redone everything, so it's going to be all in the red, but oh well. Since I deleted the times instead of deleting the splits and redoing them. Me a 0 time, but whatever. It's just going to be colorful. So if by any chance you are watching this and have not seen it ever before, I'll do my usual introduction. This is Soulcalibur 3 Chronicles of the Sword. Soulcalibur 3, the 4th game, it makes sense in context, of the Soul series made by Namco Bandai of their weapon historical fantasy weapon fighters. And Soulcalibur 3 was PS2 exclusive and the first game in the series to give the ability to make custom characters, to put your own spin on it, make your own setup. It's kind of limited, especially compared to the later versions. Soulcalibur 6 is amazing, the newest one, in what you can customize. Check online for Soulcalibur 6 custom characters. Type in random stuff. You'll see Superman and Batman. You'll see various anime characters. You'll see characters from other role-playing games. It's just insane what you can really do with it. So this one's more limited since it was made back in 2005. It was the first foray, but it contains what, in my opinion, is still the best gameplay in the Soulcalibur series, and that is this sub-game, game within a game, of the Chronicles of the Sword, which is a tactical strategy game variant that it has RPG elements with leveling up and some stats that level up with you. You don't see the numbers here, but they're represented by those that little colorful diamond showing your stats as you level up. And those do affect your in-game parameters of how much damage you do, so it makes it a little bit different than the traditional Soulcalibur experience. And if you're have just played the game versus mode and online play and story modes, because as you level up, gaining hit points and gaining stats in it really affects how many hits it takes and how much damage you do. And there's a couple of other weird things about it. But it's a really fun game mode, and I've been a fan of the Soulcalibur series since Soulcalibur 2, but this has always been my very favorite part of Soulcalibur right here, is this game mode. It's a little bit on the light side. There's a lot of downtime like this when your units are just beating on fortresses and stuff, but still I find it relatively enjoyable. When I play casually, I'll use all the different weapon styles and variety, but in the speedrun, we want to get through this as fast as possible, so I generally use just 2 different movesets in a normal playthrough, in a normal speedrun, to blitz through the thing as quick as possible. This challenge mode adds a little bit more variety into it. But you're going to be seeing a lot of the spin to win here because of the enormous damage and the stun lock combo ability of it. It just works very well for defeating most enemies in the game at the fastest possible time.
Battle 2, fight. Hurry up and disappear. Okay, that was easy.
as a strategy game, it's kind of got some little strokes of inspiration you can see from Japanese games of the genre, particularly Fire Emblem. You generally have two different win conditions that can be in. It's either what you would call an assassination, which is taking the main stronghold, although occasionally there are what have been called route missions where you have to defeat every enemy. And those are pretty much it in this game, though. There are, however, numerous loss conditions, which if you only field a limited group, you start with 2 in the tutorial. The first few early missions will get 3 characters. And then eventually we'll get up to 5, but the enemy will have sometimes more than a dozen. However, the balance of that is that your characters, if defeated, will respawn at the nearest level 3 or higher stronghold. So your main stronghold, if you haven't built up any strongholds, you can spend a little bit of gold, which I have essentially an infinite amount of. I messed that up right there. Supposed to do battle instead of move. So that's okay. So your characters will respawn. You can use it as essentially an infinite amount of gold. Normally during a normal playthrough of the game, you use gold to unlock various things, but this is a fully unlocked game. I've spent hundreds of hours in this, so I don't need to worry about that. So the money is pretty much a unnecessary pittance. But you can raise up the level of your strongholds. This gives them more hit points and allows you, as I say, to regenerate your characters if you lose them, which will inevitably happen. Although I might not need to regenerate it if I lose them in only the last fight, which is generally preferable, if at all. But the final thing they do is they affect the so-called mission of the stronghold. So missions in Soulcalibur parlance have actually been around for a long time, and they refer to special battle conditions, not objectives like what we think of when we hear missions in English, especially in video game parlance. You know, your quest objectives or whatever, the mission you're supposed to complete. Instead, they are battle effects that are on a stronghold. In the early game, you're not going to see a lot of them. Mission here is nothing. Eventually, they will add things like cure and poison that will constantly regen health over time or do damage over time, or make the ground slippery with ice, or push you around the ring with a whirlwind. And the raising the level of your fortress has 2 effects on the mission. Number 1, it makes it more potent. Number 2, it changes who it affects. At low levels, both characters are affected regardless of whether it's detrimental or beneficial. Once you have, depending on the mission, and sometimes individual strongholds are slightly different based on the level, cutscenes are unskippable.
Good luck to you.
So we have to sit through this.
Fight with all your might, as I will.
Battle 1. Fight.
But once you get to level 2 or 3, cure will only affect, the defender, and poison will only affect the attacker, and similar. Most of them are detrimental, so they'll usually only affect the attacker. But there are some, like cure, that are beneficial. So as you can see, this Soul of Xianghua Dancer Spin to Win is my primary means of getting through the game. In a normal playthrough, I would still only have 1 dancer despite this potency, because dancers have a drawback of being the weakest character in the game, and there are a few enemies that are actually totally immune to stun that we will encounter, and so the dancer is useless. With its low stats, especially its low vitality and hit points, he'll be killed very quickly, and without the ability to stun lock, the moveset, while decent, is not good enough to, really overcome those challenges for us. So storyline-wise, this has, while Soulcalibur itself takes place in a fantasy version of historical Europe at the end of the 16th century, the Chronicles of the Sword takes place in a moderately fleshed out fantasy world mirroring the time period. There is a European-esque continent with 3 different warring nations. They're all supposedly European in style, but there are a lot of different characters and their setups, and of course classes like the samurai and ninja that have an Eastern influence. So it's very, pan-world kind of thing, pan-global, the same as you'd expect in most fantasy worlds, to be honest. Most of your D&D campaigns and stuff, and especially when it comes to Japanese-style fantasy worlds from games like that. And we are a cadet in the military school of the Grandal Empire, one of the 3 great powers. We are learning the ropes of being a commander. The previous Chronicle, we just fought our friend and rival Abilia, the sharpest woman at the academy, so-called. And now we're having our graduation test against General Gerardo, who, insofar as the game, doesn't give a huge amount of background on the characters, essentially from what I've gathered from playing this game for hundreds of hours, is he is both our primary instructor at the Perugia Military Academy, as well as the supreme commander of all the Grandal forces. There's never, announced a general higher than him, so we just kind of assume he has to be, even though later on he will join us as an underling, since we, being the hero, are always the commander of our units. So there are numerous little small things I do for time saves. In general, because of the loading time of battles, avoiding battles is generally preferable, and because it takes time to hack through strongholds, fighting as few strongholds as possible is also one of the main strategies. So various Chronicles I have devised and go through with various little micro optimizations to get through it as quick as possible. In some ways, the speedrun kind of suffers from a viewing perspective, because there's a lot of the technique and strategy that I put into it goes on underneath the hood, as it were. We don't get to see it actually take place in the game because I'm just avoiding battles and stuff. That's definitely a bad start. There you go. Now he's giving me... So the biggest problem with the Dancer is that I am open while I'm trying to start my attacks, and if they do an attack that's a horizontal sweeping attack like that, especially if it goes low, I'll get hit before I can get close enough to start my combo. And as you saw, I took a lot of damage from one hit as well. Even though I deal a lot of damage, I take it. So we'll be seeing a lot of the spin to win. Starting next Chronicle, we will start to see the other characters in action. So with this, we've graduated. Since Gerardo says that since it's, just a exercise, it's not a real battle, they'd let us keep our lives when we lose, but our character's very deterministic. Whoops. Saving game always wastes time. Not a big deal since this is a first run, though. All right, changing unit type to Infantry. So in addition to character classes, which you'll see quite a bit more of in this game since I'm not just using Swordmasters, the game also has unit types that can be changed at the start of every battle. Now, when you create a character, you set its class as one of the 13 classes, and you can never change it. However, the unit type can be changed at the start of every fight, and your class determines your base stats, your overall growth of stats, and what weapon styles you can use. Unit type mostly gives you a subset, a modifier to your stats mostly on the battlefield, although it actually does affect in battle to a degree. I use bandits because they are the second fastest moving and the second fastest at destroying towers. Cavalry are the fastest running and are decently faster even than bandits, but they do minimal damage to towers. So even though you save a lot of time running around the map, you lose time when you're attacking strongholds. While there's the class that is the fastest at taking out strongholds, which is the knight, they move slow as molasses on the map. So you take down strongholds fast, but you lose a lot of time running around. And so the bandits are overall the nice middle ground of doing both fast enough to be the fastest overall. Hey, Apibaka, yes indeed. I have been very lazy, but I've decided it's about time to get back into streaming again.
It was a decent match.
So since you've just arrived, and once again for other people turning in late, this is a, I've decided to start out by doing a new challenge category, because I played around with a main character only challenge category where I only make the one dancer and otherwise use the characters they're provided, and that's interesting enough. Yes, this is still running on PS2. But the problem is, a lot of the fun I have in the game is making custom characters, and when I only customize the one character, it's a little bit boring. Plus, the 13 to 16 area of Chronicles is, even 17, is especially painful using only the main character custom and using the very minor troops you have access to there. So I decided to try another challenge mode that still restricts me in doing UWC, which is unique weapon and class. I can only use one of each weapon style and one of each class, and no Swordmasters.
It was a decent match.
Since they are overwhelmingly powerful. So to start off, I've decided to make a Final Fantasy V group, since they are, I've had some requests for that from YouTube watchers, and this is definitely going up on YouTube since it's my first attempt at it. Actually, I should be going all the way. And they are used to changing classes.
Decisive battle.
So the whole reason I went infantry there is one of the little things I do under the hood. Even though infantry are both slower and less proficient at destroying towers than bandits, and therefore slower, I need that slow speed because it allows me to fight these 3 enemies all at once, rather than having multiple loading screens. That was an unfortunate hit. There we go.
Hurry up and disappear. I have no
Battle 2. Fight.
There we go.
hurry up and disappear.
I really don't know. I've never had a PS3, so I wouldn't be able to test how well it runs on it. I'm not sure that this is even one of the games that can be played on PlayStation 3.
Hurry up and disappear.
I'm still waiting for them to choose to do some sort of remaster or a modern system port of this game. That would be the preferable. But the speedrun would definitely be improved in a lot of ways, not just in speed, but in, at least in my feeling, watchability if I could do it on a more modern system. Yeah, I know. The thing is that Soulcalibur 3 really needs a updated remaster, because it's the only one in the since Soulcalibur 2, it's the only one that was exclusive to a single system. And so there's a lot of Soulcalibur fans who played on other systems who never had a chance to really take a look at it or get a shot at it. Plus being plagued with really nasty save game bugs. it just never got a fair shake at the kind of exposure that all the other games had. And it really needs that HD remaster or just HD report onto modern systems to give it that kind of exposure. Probably never going to be done. Soulcalibur is kind of a back burner thing for Namco. It took a lot of begging and pleading and work just to get Soulcalibur 6 into a reality, but still my pipe dream for the series is
Battle 2.
getting this done. And I guess not all hope is lost. Apparently now there's something done that even allows Soulcalibur to have online play. I'm not really big into it, so I don't know the details, but they were talking about that in the Discord, that you can now play Soulcalibur online thanks to a new server that somebody has set up for it. So
Hurry up and disappear. Okay, that was easy.
So one of the neat little details in these Chronicles of the Sword is how each of the different sides have different colors and banners. And so these unique orange enemies who we won't fight again are bandits that we are fighting in our first mission here as a graduated commander of the Grandal forces. And they're not just ordinary bandits, as shown by this cutscene boss who makes his escape and all but promises that we'll see him again. And an astute observer may have noticed that we fought a couple of generic Grandal soldiers amongst these bandits, the same as we've been fighting in all the training missions up to now. And no, this wasn't laziness on the part of the developers. This is actually part of the story, because Dalkia now, at the beginning of Chronicle 4, declares war on us, several days later, as the text says, claiming that we attacked them first at a border post. And we realized that this was some sort of setup. But since this is a strategy war game and not an actual RPG, rather than investigating the cause of the war and heading off to try and, solve the conspiracy and end it normally, we follow our orders and charge into battle to defend our... Let's see, I can't remember if I want to fortify this or not. Probably do. Oops, I forgot to split there too. Oh well, let's see, what is it? No. What is my skip? There it is. Been so long since I've streamed and or speedrun. Gonna take me a little bit to get used to it.
Battle 1. Fight.
Hurry up and disappear. Okay, that was easy.
It's pretty clear from the outset that the main purpose of this entire of this subgame of the Chronicles of the Sword feature is to show off the character customization options. And there's a decent amount of that goes on. Even though they have a lot of generic soldiers, the uniform for each of the generic soldiers is different based on their faction. So they don't all have the same copy-paste, cookie-cutter armor, just not even colored differently. They have different helmets and stuff and different styles of breastplates. And then, of course, all of the commanders have their own super unique uniforms and such.
You're certainly a handful. I shall remember your name, as you are the only one who has provided a worthy challenge.
Final.
I find it interesting, even super important characters like Luna here, who becomes our primary rival in the game. We fight her more than any other character.
You never stood a chance.
Isn't really unique in any way. Like, obviously, there's no character in the game who looks like her, but you can make a character look like her. perfectly fine. All of her equipment is just the basic stuff you put on all your custom characters, so it'd be extremely easy to copy her. And that goes to all of the unique characters that you fight, with the exception of the actual Soulcalibur characters, who are available in the game as optional super bosses. She does have a bit of a Tira look to her, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if the person who mainly responsible for designing Tira, since Tira first showed up in this game as well, was also responsible for designing Luna. Now, since I want to minimize the number of battles possible, most enemies have a particular AI that causes them to rush back to defend the main stronghold when it comes under attack. So I create this and build this up so it will last a little bit longer. Of course, it's still not going to last long enough, and if the enemies happen to run into me before I finish off that stronghold, I won't be able to attack the stronghold anymore. I'll have to stop and defeat all of them first. And the one drawback to bandits is that you can fight enemies just in the field, but bandits, the drawback they get for being so efficient at destroying towers and moving quickly on the map is that they are the only class that is absolute garbage at fighting other units on the field, which is one of the reasons why I immediately go to begin battle when I encounter them. Regardless of the load times, it's definitely faster to battle out because I just can't win battles in the open with bandits. One notable thing about this character, even though he is, just like all the rest of the enemies you face, perfectly copyable, you can totally build a perfect copy of him using the custom creation. He is one of two characters who has an exceptionally tall model for some reason, which you cannot emulate. Later Soulcalibur customization, of course, allows you to adjust the size of your character, but Soulcalibur 3, they stuck to a single model size. Females might be slightly shorter than males, but regardless, other than changing the gender, there's no way to set the actual size of your character to make it different. So it's just very unique that we've got that. All right, so now we finally get 4 characters. Opening positionings are one of the things I don't talk about at all, but are one of the more interesting aspects of the game, because they always have 4 different spots for your characters to start at, and I think the very last Chronicle is the only one where basically it's in the exact same place. Otherwise, although they can sometimes be near, each of the 4 different slots you have to sort of your characters with, by default starts on one of these. So now we get to see our first brand new style that you normally don't see during one of my speedruns. The Soul of Nightmare is actually very strong. The sidestepping Outway Run 2 or 8B, Outway Run up and down with it as it were, is incredibly strong. It does a lot of damage and does a quick sidestep before it attacks, and that evades a large portion of enemy attacks. It's really surprising how easily they evade, and they usually try to do an attack because it's just one of the attacks that the AI doesn't seem to know how to even block. So you get a huge amount of damage, some pushback, which can lead to easy ring outs, good move avoidance, although sometimes if they're wide enough, they still hit like that. Also, Soulcalibur is an incredibly powerful weapon with really dangerous life drain. As you can see, I took a good amount of damage because, unfortunately, a barbarian is a pretty fragile class as well. But it's less fragile than the dancer because you get a lot of life back from the life steal. One of the interesting things about Soulcalibur in general is that they have had weapon effects for a long time, at least since Soulcalibur 2. And in each Soulcalibur, the power of certain life-gaining effects change. In Soulcalibur 2, life-draining vampiric weapon effects were decent, but not overpowered. But if you had weapons that restored health every time you attacked, those were incredibly broken. They greatly toned them down in Soulcalibur 3, but again, they increased the power of vampiric weapons so much that you can get almost all your life back in a couple of hits, even if you're almost dead. Especially with particularly powerful weapons like the Samurai's Murasame katana. No, Murasame. And the Soul Edge as wielded by Iron Sword style or Soul of Nightmare style.
Decisive battle.
One of the unique things about this Chronicle is that it is the only one where you do not, on a normal speedrun at least, you don't fight the main boss. It's very easy to avoid fighting the main boss. Every other Chronicle, the main boss will be inside the standard stronghold, the main stronghold, so you have to defeat the boss and take the stronghold, basically both.
Hurry up and disappear. Okay, that was easy.
But in this one, Rowan, who should ostensibly be the final boss of the Chronicle, is a cavalryman who prefers to get his own hands dirty, and so he's wandering back and forth to our left here. He's the guy on the horse there. And because he's a cavalry, he is so pathetic he won't be able to get through, even though he's going to want to try to attack us. He's not going to be able to get through this. I'm going to have Ferris go ahead and be the one to go. Or take any stronghold by charging forward, which he sometimes does instead. I'm attacking here mostly just as a distraction. I actually don't want to take that. But attacking it pulls one enemy away, so that's one less person I won't have to fight later on. About the time I'm about to finish it, I'm actually going to have to pull him away so I don't get involved in a fight that I really don't have any purpose for.
Final battle, fight.
I'm out of practice with Soul of Siegfried. It has a couple of decent moves. Its best one is a little bit tricky. It's the A, down A, down A. That attack has a lot of problems with the AI blocking it. I'm kind of torn between this weapon and Soulcalibur. His Soulcalibur is not as ultimate a weapon as others because it doesn't give any boost to attack power. Graham here, Graham the Sword of Grief, or Glam as they've translated it here, does. As well as having increased knockback, which is pretty useful. But knights are pretty durable, so the lack of life gain probably won't affect it too much, but it's something I don't know for certain. It's not something that I have ever used before, so the knight is going to be the wild card in this set. I know and can use the nightmares easily enough. Soul of Nightmare, the kunai I've used before on several times. It's one of the characters that I have to rely on late in the main character only as well from the assassin. Siegfried is just generally usable, has good attacks. And I know there's a couple that are good, but I'm not very practiced with them.
Hurry up and disappear.
Battle 2. Fight.
Hurry up and disappear.
Battle 3. Fight.
Come on. There we go.
Hurry up and disappear.
The interesting thing about the abusable moves that I use is not that any of these attacks are actually unblockable. It is simply that the AI, for whatever reason, even he's holding block, so it looks like I have an unblockable attack, but it just so happens that he's letting go of block the exact frame that my attack lands. It's like frame perfectness is working a little bit against the AI because its programming is just slightly faulty there. And I think there's quite a lot of that in Soulcalibur 3, and I suspect that it arises from the fact that there are 43 different fighting styles. Even if many of them are similar, they're all different enough that the AI just isn't strong enough, programmed well enough to be able to account for all of the different movesets. So there's some that just confuse it. But sometimes, if they're feeling particularly defensive, they will hold guard the entire time and get into a loop where they just keep blocking. In which case, there's little I can do except for try and shake things up, which is dangerous, or keep going until they get bored and let go, which they usually do. It becomes a little bit of a game of chicken, in fact. So we continue our advance through Dalkian territory. Abilia has been assigned as our second in command now. So she's joined up with us, along with a couple of other characters who have decent amount of characterization for a NES RPG, but, you know, this isn't really an RPG, so we don't get a huge amount of characterization for them, some more than others. But most at least introduce themselves when they join our forces. Theoretically, we have an army, but we only have a few units that we can actually use. And again, we can never field nearly the amount that the AI can. We have 4 basic enemies, 4 mini-boss enemies, the optional super boss of Lizard Man, who's sitting in the middle there. We had Ivy and Cervantes last Chronicle, who we ignored. And Luna, again, in her base. Now, this is a special assassination. I have to kill Luna, but also I don't need to defeat all enemies, but I need to defeat Luna and all 4 of her lieutenants, who are called for some reason the Klesser Pemdo, and I've never found anywhere anything that explains where that name came from. And again, this isn't a popular enough game that I've had been able to find people who... It's probably some sort of English mistranslation. Like, it could be the caress something, or it could be an R, it could be a KOR or KUR, with the way that they do things and the way they translate English or semi-Western style names that they come up with are always hard to do.
Decisive battle.
But these have a theme. Each of them has an elemental theme to them. There are, of course, no actual elements in this game. It's not a real RPG. As frustrating as that is when I try to get it into RPG marathons and it won't be accepted. But they do put these themes on them. So Loopy here is obviously a fire theme. Oh, nice sidestep. So whenever she defends a stronghold, her designated strongholds are fire-based, and she has fire-type missions in those strongholds as well. Yes, it's lightning, but if you know Soulcalibur lore, it makes sense because Guard Break is a stage-powered weapon, and then unblockable attacks, which are generally considered an upgrade to Guard Breaks. They could be like soul-charged Guard Break attacks, for instance, are flames writhed on it. And she will later have that flame-writhed unblockable attack mission. So yeah, those missions sound awful, don't they? All of your enemies' attacks are totally unblockable. They're usually not all that dangerous, though, because it seems that the AI is made less aggressive, probably on purpose, because if an aggressive AI has all unblockable and does nothing but attack, they are just going to totally take you out in no time, and you can't really do anything about it. So having a more reserved defensive AI set for those makes sense, because it makes them doable. And since I am super aggressive, that means that they're actually not all that bad. This one is Eloa of the Wind.
Battle 1.
So we get a little whirlwind effect, and you can already see that it's pushing me away. This one is light. She is usually not too bad or aggressive, but unfortunately today she's being a pain. I've got her now, though. Her weapon improves her defense, and she's pretty high level, so you can see already that good stats and good items greatly reduces the amount of superpower that I do with this spin to win. Luckily, it's a weak whirlwind. It's like the weakest whirlwind effect in the game, possibly. At least the one that I actively fight. So it doesn't interfere much. Later whirlwinds push me away so much that my combo is always in danger of failing. It just depends on the AI, which direction they decide to get up. If it's towards me, I'll be fine, but if it's away from me, I won't be able to hit them. Now, it's a pain to go through all of the strongholds, but luckily, even though these guys are supposed to be guarding specific strongholds, they do have the normal AI programming to retreat and defend, unlike these 4 generic AIs who have the attack, attack, attack script and just charge forward. They will rush back to defend, so that allows me to not only do 2 less strongholds, I get to skip the strongholds with the more annoying missions. Whirlwind, as I say, this one was weak. The guard break doesn't mean anything. AG of Earth has Quake on her mission, which every 3 seconds will stun you unless you're on the ground blocking or in the air or lying on the ground because you got hit, which generally is not a good thing. But Hildo has the worst with ice, and her AI is generally one of the worst in the game, so the ice isn't terrible either way, but it's still a pain to deal with, so skipping that is much preferable. Instead, we have to deal with 3 characters in the Cure, which makes this slightly slower than we would like, but that's okay. One of the great things about having this particular game as well is I now get 3 characters who can do taunts. It's just a thing I've always liked to do when playing at the end of a battle, since I can't do anything else, and you're sitting stuck waiting for several seconds anyway. The taunt command has just always been something I enjoy. But your 17 normal custom styles, the ones created for custom characters, don't have a taunt command. 2 of them have sort of taunt commands. If you use taunt with the sword and shield, it's actually a charge up for that moveset for some reason, which will empower other attacks. You call a bolt of lightning from the sky onto your sword as if you were He-Man or something. And then B plus K, which is often an attack I use on most sets, is instead a taunt-like move for the dancer with tambourines, which is a little bit odd. But every other... There's nothing even close to a taunt on any other of the 17 custom weapon styles. So only your regular Soulcalibur styles have taunts on them. So now I have the Nightmare taunt and the Siegfried taunt is to go along with the Xianghua taunt. So that's nice. The first 10 or so Chronicles are not going to be really much different on any percent because of the fact that I really need to do this for SC percent to get the most out of it. I never really did it with MCO because I was just so afraid of trying to win those battles with really subpar characters. But quite honestly, you don't see much of a difference in any percent because so many of the battles can be fought with just 2 characters. It's rare that I have to split off into 3 or more groups or that a third person could do it. I mean, even as far as the bridge mission in Chronicle 5, I could have my secondary character with the katana sitting in that stronghold as well, which maybe I should do. It would be a little bit more reliable. Not a really big deal either way. But because I'm able to do most of the fighting with just one character and occasionally a second, I don't have to worry about much. Who am I fighting with? I don't even know. Galoof. Okay, that's fine. Give him some experience. But if I go on SC%, I have to spread characters out to go fight the Soulcalibur characters. And so, since I still have reasonably reliable movesets on all 5, it'd be a little bit more useful. Golly, just beat me in speed.
Battle 2. Fight.
So I might do 2 runs of this on any percent and then swap it over to be an SC% and might make that exclusive because I have a lot more confidence in beating the Soulcalibur characters with these movesets. And that way I'll be able to showcase the other styles a whole lot more. Just makes it an overall more entertaining run. Both for me to play and to watch as well. I've been doing the last few that I've done, not that I've done any in the last little bit, but most of them I've been doing, have just been any percent the last several I've done. I really need to get back into doing more SC% because I really feel that that's the most fun and the really quintessential category for this speedrun. And welcome to the stream, Fireteeth. I have been very lazy. I have had no good reason for not streaming over the past many months. I just haven't done it. And I really need to get started. The closest thing I've had to an excuse is the last couple weeks I've been watching Dota 2's International. But now that that's over, I really feel... I've had some ideas, though, too. Getting this new idea breathed some life and spark into it because I'm doing a brand new category for this Soulcalibur 3 speedrun. So getting back into the story we've been neglecting for a little bit, we're now fighting a new color, teal. Don't get used to them because we won't be seeing them very long. This is the 3rd country on the continent, the Haltese so-called Republic, which used to be a monarchy but only recently overthrew its nobility, and still has some noble enemies in the background, which is very important. And since we've been engaged in war with Dalkia, they think that we're, been weakened from this warfare, and we've got all our forces focused on Dalkia, and so it's a prime time for them to try and seize a little bit of land from us, so they've declared war. And even though we've been advancing into Dalkia, the Emperor decided that we were the perfect commander to send down to repel the Haltese invasion, too. Abelia was left in charge of our invading force, so our the rest of our retinue came with us, and they're rather peeved about it. We have to do more work, and we've been fighting and suddenly have to march, across the country to a new battlefield, while she gets to take all the quote-unquote credit for defeating Dalkia. This is ice. You can see how I'm sliding around. It is a pain. Luckily, it doesn't interfere too much with the spin to win, but it can still be pretty dangerous, and it's really easy to get knocked off. You're not going to attack? Fine, then. They almost always start with an attack to try and push you back, so it's good to get a block ready, but she was very passive, so this is often where I feel in a normal playthrough is an okay time to get my first death. The last few times I've been doing normal any percent, I've had hyper-aggressive enemies in the early game, which didn't used to happen a whole lot, though it's been happening more and more frequently. Didn't get it this time, luckily, for the most part, so I'm fine. Nope, can't fortify because he's already there. I should be fine, though. One fortification, I think, is all I actually need, since I have 4 characters on here. But luckily, the ice cooperated. So anyway, our newest addition to our party to replace Sibilia, though, was General Gerardo, who, again, as far as we know in the storyline, since it doesn't give a lot of details about the inhabitants of Grandal or its command structure, Gerardo is the only general who's ever mentioned, and therefore the person we assume to be the commanding officer of all of the Grandal forces.
Decisive battle.
I mean, there isn't even an otherwise important general defending later on, which I'm not going to talk about more because that's spoilers just in case you haven't seen it before. But so Gerardo, but he's put himself under our command for this. I guess since he's commander-in-chief, he can do what he likes, including serve as the sub-commander to a young and rather untested brand new commander, graduate from the academy. Whatever. When you're playing casually for the first time, he's level 15 at this point, and my dancer, who has been absorbing all of the combat, is only level 18, so as level 15 knight, he's extremely strong and a really good character to use on your first playthrough. The lance is also an okay weapon. Not good enough for the speedrun generally, but really, really good and reliable. It was the very first weapon I actually had to use to beat the boss the very first time, the final boss. For some reason, I couldn't do it even with the katana style, which I'd already learned was very dominant with the shoulder charge. I just couldn't figure out any other way to beat him. But finally poked at him with the lance until he died. All right. So now in the midst of our battle with Haltise, suddenly somebody came and assassinated the commander after he retreated from battle with us. Hey Sylvanas, welcome to the stream. Yeah, it's been way too long. No, I'm... Yeah, actually, that's fine. I can't remember now. It has been so long I cannot remember my routing anymore. So now we're fighting Green, Mileta, who were not previously somebody who even really existed. But apparently Mileta is a province of the Haltise Republic, and its lord has declared himself the rightful king of a new kingdom, and rebelled against Mileta, taking advantage of our counterattack after they declare war. And so now that our enemies are basically fighting each other, it would be a perfect excuse to just, retreat back to Grandal and ask for new orders, because Haltise is not going to be in any position to do anything to us now. But nope, our super compassionate character makes moral decisions that we do not personally make. And so we have to go and save the poor Haltise soldiers who are being slaughtered, our former enemies. I'm thinking about it. I did so many for the 2 marathons that I did it for that I kind of burned myself out a little. But it is definitely something I'd like to do more of. Yeah, the jumping spin attack is a really, really good ring out strat, especially on high HP enemies. I'm planning on streaming semi-regularly for the next little bit, at least until if I finally start putting in some job applications and get me a job. But I'm going to be planning to do a lot more streaming, and I'm not going to be able to do the same thing every day. This has always been my primary speedrun, the first one I ever did, and still the one that I consider mine more than anything else, the Soulcalibur 3. But I need to get back to doing my gold box speedruns a little bit more, especially if, fingers crossed, we get to do the RPG Limit Break next year, I still have a speed run for that pretty much locked up since it was supposed to be in 2020. Poexel has said that anybody who resubmits the things that were accepted for 2020 are pretty much auto-accepted for the next time we finally get our RPG Limit Break. But I would like to do some more Worlds Collide, yes, at some point. Ring outs work a little bit differently in Chronicles of the Sword than they do anywhere else. A little bit of interesting developer foresight, or maybe something that they beta tested. Because enemies get so many hit points in this game, and because battles are not best 2 out of 3 or whatever, when you lose, you're done, they figured out that... and another fight. They figured out that ring outs are just way too strong. So they actually set ring outs uniquely in this game mode to not be maximum health and to just be instant wins. Instead, a ring out takes 50% of maximum health. So if they're at half health or less, it does still count as a victory. Otherwise, they will reset the battle. And it resets the battle, but takes away a huge chunk of their health. So it's still very, very beneficial. Yeah, it'd be... they haven't done nearly enough of it. It's definitely one of the hidden perks of this game, although a lot of people are pretty critical of the 17, custom move classes. They do have enough unique things and variety in them that it still adds a lot more interesting complexity to the game, all these different weapon styles and stuff. All right. So I started with my main character way over to the side, specifically to pull this guy out so I wouldn't have to fight him. It ends up, wow, never got in a fight, never needed to be reordered. This has been one of the more interesting Chronicles to route over the years because it's just very weird. It's unique in the fact that we have to save these Haltese soldiers. You don't have to save a specific number of them. You just have to prevent 3 from dying. If 1 die or 2 die, it doesn't matter. I lose cannon pretty much always. And if I don't lose cannon because I'm doing some other type of set, I'll lose Larage instead. And you would think that since that's one of your loss conditions, that the AI would try to kill them. That's usually the case in most similar types of games. But it actually isn't the case. Instead, the AI have very basic programming. They want to charge and attack your characters. And it took me a while to figure that out. I figured that I could just build up as a big group, punch through the middle, let them rush over and take out the guys on the sides. And as long as I didn't lose, too many of them, which is kind of hard to do, everything would be fine. But as it turns out, one thing that I never did playing casually for a decade was I always spread my characters out to try and save all the Haltese because I'm a completionist type character, or I should say player at heart. It's how I even learned that bandits were really good because I just stuck with infantry because they seemed fine until I got to this Chronicle and couldn't save everybody in time. Yeah. She's always been good, but never was as good as she is in 3. But I spent a long time trying different ways of
Decisive battle.
trying to figure out how not to fight them before I figured out finally by moving stuff around that actually they all converge on me and not on the Haltese soldiers. So saving the Haltese soldiers is actually really easy. If you group up like that, they aren't going to spread out to attack more than one or two at a time. So as long as you just don't care about that, it's fine. Okay, Heil, come on. Heil is one of the most annoying characters in the game. You fight him 3 times in a row, 3 missions in a row. He gets worse every time.
You never stood a chance.
Sometimes he can... If you can get your one good hit on him, he's done, just like everybody else. But he tends to be very, very annoying. Wow, I actually managed to avoid having that dialogue until the end. That almost never happens. I forgot there's so much dialogue in this Chronicle. You skip it faster. So now this is another unique Chronicle. We once again have 2 colors, but this time they're both enemies. They've allied together. Dalkia, who is supposed to have been practically defeated by us, has all of a sudden formed an alliance with Moletta, and they've combined against us. So guess who they've sent as their representative to fight the Grandal forces? That's right. It is absolutely our good buddy Luna and her Cluster Pemdo. The one time you'll fight the Cluster Pemdo outside of fortresses. Oh yeah. I need one person to go there. Wrong one, but that's fine, actually. Oh, goodness. My very favorite has always been Terry Pratchett. He does the Discworld books, did the Discworld books. He passed away a few years ago. That's one of my absolute favorites. I've been reading Lord of the Rings since I was small, of course. Yeah, this probably isn't the weapon. It actually doesn't combo well. We'll stick to that for now.
What a show! That was a pretty good warm-up fight.
Let's see, what are some of the others? Ellie Modesset has always been a good one. Read many of his books. His worlds are always enjoyable and very deep. David Eddings has some good ones. If you're into older stuff, one of the very first isekai type things was the Dragon Knight series by Gordon R. Dixon. That's always been really solid. I haven't read Brandon Sanderson yet, but I've heard a lot of good things about it. It's kind of just like, I'm almost too afraid to get into him kind of thing, I think. Because I have so many other things I'm doing now, I just don't really want to start much new. I have no idea what I'm doing now. But including my best friend, he's read several of them and highly recommends them, so... Yeah, no, that's going to take too long. I'm going to have to do Galuf. Sometime I'll sit me down and read some Brandon Sanderson. It's just been too well recommended to not to.
Battle 1. Fight.
Whoa, that's an attack I've never really seen before. Come on. Now I've got her. And that's why this is powerful, because there comes all my hit points back.
Battle 2. Fight.
My word.
Battle 3, fight!
Oh no.
Fight!
Goodness, Hildo is murderous today.
Hurry up and disappear. Come on, come on.
Battle 4, fight!
Hurry up and disappear.
Battle 5, fight!
Okay, that did not go as planned. Considering these are two movesets I don't use a whole lot in this, though, I'm not too surprised. Should have kept my katana wielder back for this. But Hildo just really went off. She is not normally that aggressive. But that's the very interesting thing about this speedrun, is that the aggressive flag can be set to any of the enemies you fight in any Chronicle. Just usually at least one per run. Considering you fight over 100 enemies, that's not too surprising. But one or two will just get this point where they decide that they are going to be the hero of the story and totally lay into you.
Battle 1, fight!
Did I do it? Goodbye. Did I do it?
And so with characters who can't tot, since I can't do anything else, following them into the grave is always fun.
Battle, fight!
Did I do it? Goodbye. Did I do it? Goodbye. Did I do it? It was a decent match.
All right. One of the things that complicates this mission is that it is one of the route type missions. I can't just take the main stronghold. I have to defeat everybody, so
Battle.
that means that the preferred way of doing it is getting all the enemies grouped into as small a into as big a group as possible, as few different battles.
Battle 1, fight! Battle 2, fight!
Stop running around so much. There we go.
Battle 3, fight! Final battle, fight!
All right, now. All right. I messed up on this mission slightly, but I'm not really sad about it since it's a first time for this category. Got to label it, and my live split is different, although I did save it differently. I forgot to change the label.
Be careful from now on.
Okay. All right, now if all those guys make it before I take the thing out, that'll be preferable. Actually back off the leader. I'd rather get some experience for Lena anyway. Now is probably fine. There we go. Okay, last 4 right there, and then we're done.
Decisive battle.
Again, one of those points where if you kill the stronghold too fast, the enemy isn't all gathered there, and so then you have to load up multiple battles, which takes longer and is extra annoying.
Fight.
It's over.
Battle 2. Fight.
Did I do it? You can't get away. Did I do it?
Come on.
Knockout.
It's over.
Oftentimes, the more annoying, one of the reasons that so many of my strategies work so well is the AI is usually very, very
Battle 3.
reliable on how soon they get up from their attacks. So it fits the timing perfectly with Shanghua's spin to win, which is why it works so darn well. And I also have the timing down pretty well for using the shoulder charge, although it doesn't follow up into guaranteed combos. His resistance to ring out, so annoying. He's not immune to ring out, but his weapon makes it a lot harder for him to get hit by ring out. And, you know, he avoided it like 3 or 4 times there. But very occasionally, the AI will take longer on the ground than they normally would for whatever reason. They don't get up immediately, and that's more the exception that proves the rule of just how reliably they get up. And so when they do that, it throws off my strategies a whole lot. Okay, that's 9 down. Now comes 10, which is not nearly as bad as... It's one of the rougher Chronicles, but it's not too very bad, and it's worth a lot of experience. I've gotten a recent idea from a YouTube comment to avoid fighting the 7 guys who follow the main fortress falling here. Oh, I have 5 characters. That's right. But I think that would actually take more time because then I'd have to wait for them to take the stronghold and then take it back. Hard to say that that's better, especially since it doesn't earn me any EXP, which isn't super necessary, but still useful to have. especially in any percent where I have to forego the... Now let's see if I can remember the strat here and if it works right. There are two enemies off to the side whose AI script is very complicated and changes up what they do depending on the positioning of my units in very subtle ways. Most of the time when I just charge forward, one guy charges forward and the other rushes back to defend. I'd prefer to fight neither of them if I can, and after a bit of randomness seemingly happening, I've kind of come up with a strat where I can trigger both of them to charge forward. While sometimes playing around with it, I actually triggered both of them to retreat, which was an entirely different matter. And there, I did it. Slightly delays taking down the stronghold, but avoiding the extra fight is a little bit of a time save. Especially considering that this is one of the more annoying fortresses in the game. This stronghold is the thing that really causes a lot of grief, because the mission is offense down, which is essentially the same thing as defense up. The enemy takes a lot less damage from your attacks, which makes them last longer. When I first started running this, I relied on almost entirely Swordmasters, because Swordmasters had the best stats and the katana was the overall best weapon. I knew that Xianghua's spin to win was really deadly. I'd figured that out over the course of playing with almost every weapon style casually for 10 years. But I was a little bit afraid of how weak the Dancer is, and so I just went with Swordmasters. And this fight in particular, this stronghold in particular, this guy is actually, Demuth here, the king of Mileta, is actually quite weak, but it's the third Heil fight that's a real pain. And he's very good at blocking the shoulder charge of the katana. And but I finally decided that maybe having my main character be a dancer who would get the most experience and could potentially stun lock better than any other moveset might be useful. And when I through the first 9 Chronicles, I wasn't super convinced. I didn't have the flow down perfectly, and they were very weak, so it was not that much faster that I could see. And then I did this fight, and this happened when I spent like 5 minutes trying to kill him with a Swordmaster with shoulder charge. And it was as slow as that was, it's a huge improvement over just about anything else you can do to him. That was what convinced me that the Dancer really is the best unit for just abusing the AI the most reliably in the speedrun. Super simplifies that fight right there. Now we've got a bunch of guys charging forward, and part of the problem and why I don't think the strategy of avoiding fighting them is a very good one. I'm probably going to test it out at some point, but I haven't felt like doing that yet. I'd rather just get into the swing of things. I'm going to see if Galuf can get some experience here. As a barbarian, his nightmare moveset is pretty good, but he is fragile enough that it's with his low level up to this point, it's a little bit of a rough spot. I might actually make the Berserker the second person going forward, just so I can force them to get a little bit more XP early on. Because even if the Samurai isn't quite as good as the Swordmaster, they're still the second best class, and they still have decent enough stats and everything that they're not that fragile. One of the other things about this stronghold that makes it a pain is that it seems that the offense down still affects you, even though it shouldn't. Because at this level, it should just be something that affects the attacker and not the defender, but it really feels like you're always doing noticeably less damage even when defending it.
Battle 3, fight!
All right, now we're getting into the nightmare.
I want to.
Battle 4, fight! Final battle, fight!
Goodness, the chip damage. Nightmare should not be doing chip damage.
You should listen to your elders.
Let's see. Let's go ahead and put on Soulcalibur and be done. I'll have you fight the last two, get some experience. Might even have to make the knight the second character. Or Siegfried just might take some more practice, or I need to find another alternative. Siegfried definitely has some good uses, and has a couple of moves which, if I can get good at using them,
Battle 1, fight!
can be pretty abusive. Plus, Knight is a strong class, but I just haven't been able to do it right.
Battle 2, fight!
Might keep the Knight, but go with Iron Sword instead of Siegfried, because I just can't get the moves that I'm thinking of to work right. Nightmare is working well, though. Had the one problem against Hildo, but overall it's working pretty well.
Final battle, fight.
Making me question the wisdom of using a category like this for SC percent, but we'll see.
Final battle, fight.
One problem with the assassin is they never like to say anything at the end of battle. It seems like they didn't program voice lines properly just for certain of the voice sets, because they do certainly give dialogue at certain points, but one definite advantage to the proposed strategy of avoiding those fights and just letting them take the Citadel and then taking it back is that the inconsistency of battles and the possibility of one of the 8 killing you, which is certainly more than plausible, as happened here, is if you don't fight that, you can't get killed. That's one advantage to that idea. Definitely worth looking into, but not something I'm going to start out on a brand new category until I've given it some testing.
It looks like I'm just too strong for you.
The good news is, if I do lose anybody and I don't lose this fortress, I will regenerate there, so they'll be back into battle before too long. For the most part, this one isn't too bad on normal any percent, because your Swordmasters just walk all over these guys regardless. The Dancer can usually get overwhelmed by how aggressive the follow-up ones are, but they aren't as good defensively as Heil is, so Swordmasters will just power through them. Katana wielders in general. But SC percent is a pain because of Song Mina sitting over there in ice. Probably the hardest of all of the Soulcalibur characters you have to fight over the course of the game, because ice is just such a pain.
Decisive battle.
So now we get the big reveal that ties everything up and makes sense of it all. And they do a pretty good job of explaining it all in very few words and cutscenes. We had Chester talking to Demuth before. I skipped through that text, but wow, what a facial expression on Bart's there. Wow.
As you see, I must protect this country. I have this brilliant plan of pitting Grandal and Dalkia against one another, and then rise to power during the resulting chaos. But because of your unexpected meddling, my plan is in ruins. You will pay dearly for this.
Now, it might not be easy to recognize him if you aren't paying enough attention, but this is the same person who was the bandit leader we fought way back in Chronicle 3, and holy cow, he is on a mission today. Usually he's extremely weak, but he decided he was going to go all out. Still couldn't take me, though. Testament to how bad he is. But once you understand that this is the same guy as question mark from Chronicle 3, the bandit leader, you start to get a sense. Also, some of the dialogue we skipped at the beginning of this chronicle had him telling the King Demuth that he had no use for him anymore. And they were getting into an argument about that before we showed up, and they decided they both had to kill us first before they could fight over who was supposed to be the ruler of this new country. But as he said, he set war between them by yeah, this is the first chronicle where we actually are all in the same exact spot regardless. Person we fought briefly and then was unceremoniously killed in that pre-mission dialogue as well was Mooncalf, who was apparently nobility in the old Haltese kingdom before it was overthrown by the peasants, a la the French Revolution, and a so-called republic was started up.
Decisive battle.
And her daughter was taken from her at the time, and the game pretty much similar to Realm being Shadow's daughter in Final Fantasy VI, it's pretty much established that Luna is actually Mooncalf's daughter, taken from her and raised without any knowledge of it. There's actually some interesting Easter eggs in the game if you look for them. Come on. Golly. That's the problem with all unblockables. If they do decide to be aggressive, you can't really do anything about it.
Hurry up and disappear. It looks like I'm the winner.
Usually you don't have to worry about Loopy because, again, just being in an unblockable place, she has that. Now, each of the Klesser Pemdo are in their ultimate forms here. They each have a unique weapon, which if you're playing for the first time after defeating them at the end of the Chronicle, it unlocks the weapon for your use. Some of them are decent. They all actually have drawbacks, which makes them slightly less reliable than you'd like, but just the various weapons all have interesting properties and looks to them. In addition, they all have actually unique missions that are a combination of two different ones, even though some of these we haven't seen before. Like hers, the Cruel Sword there was all unblockable plus Blast, which is supposed to make things do more knockback, and sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't really work properly and instead causes more damage. Because enemies aren't getting knocked back, they're taking additional frame damage or something. It's weird, it's hard to explain. But it's just depends on the weapon style and what attacks are being used. It isn't fully programmed correctly from what I can tell.
One, fight.
And this is how Hildo usually is, pretty passive, allowing us to easily kill her.
Hurry up.
She has Sacred Field, which is a combination of Ice and Cure. And again, this is one of probably the easiest ice battle in the game, simply because Hildo isn't aggressive enough to really take advantage of it. Doesn't have a good weapon for pushback. Because the biggest problem with ice, besides movement sliding around, is a pretty big problem too. But even if you block, you get pushed back and can easily get pushed out of the ring. And Sung Mina has a weapon with some very long range, wide attacks and pokey attacks that do a good job of pushing even if blocked on ice. But Hildo doesn't really have attacks that do that quite as well, even if she does get aggressive enough and you try to be defensive and block her. So you just tend to walk over her. Eloa has Holy Wings, which is a combination of
Decisive battle.
Whirlwind and Aerial Wind. Whirlwind pushes you around in a circle, of course. It's the bigger problem. The Aerial Wind is seen very few times. Again, it's something we haven't even seen before. And what it does is it makes knock up attacks that knock you into the air lift you much higher. But again, her style is actually very bad for that. And there, the Whirlwind made me miss because she went backwards instead of forward. There, she didn't get up in time, but she was easy enough. But her weapon style is almost no attacks that lift up into the air, so you never really see the Aerial Wind. The primary place you'll see it in a casual game is on the ultimate super boss End in Chronicle 19, level 99 Swordmaster. His mission is Aerial Wind, and he does several knockup attacks, and you'll see herself floating in the air like a feather for several seconds before coming down. You don't take like additional fall damage or anything. It's just a little bit easier to juggle, and it wastes time, which of course is bad for a speedrun. The secondary effect of Sacred Field was Cure, in case you didn't see the glowing green there, which is generally not too big of a deal. This is the worst one by far, though. AG is the first of 3 characters to have Unstoppable Force combined with Quake, which gives her Impregnable. Quake is annoying on its own, and we haven't seen it yet, but mostly just because I avoided it. There have been a few missions with Quake. But that's really, really bad is that Unstoppable Force means that she doesn't react to anything. She doesn't suffer guard stunning or damage stunning or anything. Weapons pass through her without doing anything at all. So she can attack us with impunity. Super bad timing there. But she's doing really well today. Throws are the very worst things. Her weapon is really bad. It actually damages her as she attacks, so she will eventually kill herself. Unfortunately, if she's choosing other attacks, sometimes I can kill her with a single character if she is less aggressive or she times her attacks badly. The triple attack I like to use with the katana has the advantage of sometimes passing over... that is a lot of damage, at least. That does a lot of chip damage. So the kunai is actually pretty solid for this. So one loss is pretty standard against her because it's just so hard to fight through an Unstoppable Force. Luckily, her stats are not super duper great compared to one of the other Unstoppable Force people. So even though the Quake makes it bad, she'll eventually kill herself. She doesn't have a huge amount of HP, and she doesn't do a whole lot of damage with her hits. The worst part is just if she decides to keep grappling you, because that doesn't take health away and, of course, eats up a lot of time as she does damage. So annoying, but not super terrible. The Dancer is almost totally useless against her, so I pulled back my main character because he would almost certainly die, so why suffer a guaranteed death? Because every fight in the game except for one, if you conquer a citadel with a full group, whoever is at the top of the list, generally your main character, but sometimes your, whichever fighter you have in the lead, if it isn't the main, will be the one fighting. So I definitely want to avoid him fighting, so the only way I can do that is to make sure he's not attacking the stronghold.
So you've come. This time, it will not be like our previous encounters. See if you can defeat this sword.
Oh my, she has Soulcalibur. What does this mean? This means that they couldn't get away from the 2 swords even when they make a fantasy world that is not Earth. So we don't know the full backstory of the weapons. She's gonna kill me this time, though. Nope, I've got her now. She almost had me.
Okay, that
So they throw Soulcalibur and Soul Edge into the storyline, but just kind of hand wave them. And they're not strictly as important, and in some ways it's story and gameplay segregation even, which is generally the case for the weapons anyway in actual gameplay of Soulcalibur games, but it's particularly egregious here. All right, Lena needs to be at 1. Everybody else, let's be at 4. I think this is wrong, but we will see. Or I could just go that way, actually. No, this is fine. There's so many units charging, I have to have somebody back to defend my stronghold. And they're all so powerful and aggressive that they will usually overwhelm anyone but a katana wielder. So Lena's going to be our hero again here.
Decisive battle. The battle 1. Fight.
Where are you going? Hurry up and disappear.
In some ways, the knife weapon is the worst weapon in the game. It does have bombs, which can be moderately useful, but all the rest of its attacks are shorter range, less power, and less speed than every equivalent weapon.
Hurry up and disappear.
Pretty much the only good thing you can do with it is just keep tossing bombs at medium range.
Fight.
Hurry. You never stood a chance.
Alright, let's give her Iron Sword. The biggest problem with Iron Sword is it tends to be, it's one of the ones that falls off. It has some pretty good unblockable attacks, one in particular, but it tends to fall off a lot towards the end as enemies just avoid it rather than blocking it.
Battle 1. Fight.
It's also not the most damaging attack, so I was hoping that I could use the Siegfried style pretty well, but it just wasn't working out for me.
Can't stop me.
If I practice it enough, maybe it can serve as a replacement for this, but
Final battle. Fight.
not sure what else I would use as a replacement for my 5th style, because the other 4 are pretty set as the strongest. Oh, I love it when they do that. That's so hilarious.
You can't
See ya! Thanks for the free win. If they sidestep, you're locked into a long animation, and then they start beating you from the side, and it's pretty easy to sidestep later on. The other possibilities, really, the only other ones that are kind of good to fill in a 5th slot would be let's see, what are the levels at now? Yeah, she's still the lowest, so I'll have her. Staff, but staff can only be used by really bad classes, so I'd rather not do that one. Especially since it has no recovery on its good weapons, so if I start taking life, there's absolutely no way to get it back or recover at all. So it's live when they die. Keelik is the same situation. It does have some life restore on Soulcalibur at least. Soulcalibur is a pretty good staff weapon. And you can use the long-range poke with that. A similar poke, though not quite as good, with Sungmina, who is a gladiator who's a better class, but Sungmina is more entertaining. More interesting for me to play. Sungmina is my favorite Soulcalibur character. Although I've liked her style less the longer it's gone on in the Soulcaliburs, as they keep moving it further and further away from the Keelik style. Even though she was first, and then Keelik was a copy of her style, and then they decided that the style belonged more to Keelik, and because he was the more important character, and started adjusting her with more and more moves. Although the way she is in 6 isn't bad. Quite a bit different now, which is not as fun, but it's still got a lot of her classic moves and some interesting ones. Or might have been just where she was at her worst, but anyway, they're all possibilities, but I just don't know if I like them as much. I don't know if they'd be that big of an improvement over like an Iron Sword. But Iron Sword does have the Soulcalibur and has a couple of other options I can use if they're avoiding the double swing too much. We'll see how it goes on the next run. I'll stick to the Iron Sword from the beginning and see if I wind up with as many deaths. Every attempt, of course, at this just proves how good my strategy of Dancer plus katana-wielding Swordmasters is, but I definitely would like to have a couple of other things, 3 more skills reliable enough to use on this that I can have it close to the regular any percent time. That's my main goal. So yeah, last 2 Chronicles, we're back to finishing off Dalkia. As we saw in 9, Abilia was supposed to be mopping them up, but somehow she was so incompetent that they were able to not only fight her off when she had the Dalkia by its throat, they were able to send reinforcements to help out, which of course was our rival Luna. Although she couldn't finish the job, so we just came and hooked up with her again and rescued her in the last Chronicle, and so now it's the final battle against the Dalkian forces, and at that point we will be the only power left on the entire continent, which you would think would mean it's like the end of the game. How can you have a war with nobody to fight? I guess we'll see going forward.
Final battle, fight!
Ah, darn. There we go. Pretty good ring out attack right there if you can get them close to the edge and they can avoid it. As long as they don't avoid it. One of the other subtle things that just makes Katana and Soul of Xianghua both so good for the speedrun is that both of their attacks are highly damaging and have decent ring out potential. So against enemies with a lot of hit points, if you're on a ring that allows it... Oh, darn. That was the wrong person. That's going to waste me a little bit of time. Oh, well. Not a huge amount. Not a huge amount. And again, it's first run. It'll give me more opportunities to see green and gold going forward.
The final battle, fight.
Darn it.
Fight.
I vowed to be victorious. I cannot lose.
Rowan is one of the few characters in the game, besides all of the Soulcalibur characters, any that aren't inside of a fortress already, will automatically start battle with you if you meet them, so that you can't cheese them by just overwhelming them with more characters, since all they do is stand still.
Battle, fight.
Because Rowan's an important boss, he also automatically starts the battle when he runs into you, which is pretty convenient because it saves a little bit of time over me doing it myself. Oh, darn. That was a mistake.
What? Impossible!
All right. Rowan's unique lance, Sacrifice, is one of my favorite. It's not a super good weapon. It pierces like a lot of lances do, so it does chip damage if blocked.
Final battle, fight.
But it also causes him to take chip damage when he blocks, but it has an exceptionally long reach. But just for the look of the thing is really cool.
It was a decent match.
Alright, now time for the wimpiest boss in the entire game, Aurelia, the Queen of Dalkia. Which kind of makes a little bit of sense. You wouldn't expect a regular, especially a queen-ruled country to be their very best fighter. Especially since she looks more like a ruling estate monarch, not a
Decisive battle.
warrior woman monarch, but it's still, especially, considering it is a fantasy medieval world, pretty disappointing that the final boss of the final kingdom you conquer is a complete and total wimp. The only time I've ever lost to her is when I've had a very sliver of health and she aggressively was able to hit me first before I got my sunlock going on her. Also, that line,
Worthless servant of Strife.
same as Luna said, same as we'll hear again a few Chronicles down the road. So you've come.
Daring to defy me.
Battle one.
Once again, her unique sickle there is extremely cool, Black Widow. It's also relatively useful because I think it's vampiric if I remember right, so it's a decent sickle.
You never stood a chance.
Like all of those unique ones, it has some sort of drawback, like maybe lower defense or something, I can't remember, but still pretty good. Still under 2 hours for 12, not bad. I'm probably about 20 minutes behind my regular any percent likely, but... Oh, a year has passed. We are now in charge of the anti-rebellion task force because General Gerardo, our beloved General Gerardo, has decided to rebel against the country, leading a, rebellion, revolution. Rising up against it. The exact details of why are not known, but there are hints dropped in the story and shown in places that the Emperor is not the nicest guy. But even though our character can't believe that Gerardo would do such a thing, and he must have a reason, once again, we do not have the option of choosing to join with the rebellion or anything. Nope. With Amelia as our second in command, we just march off, lawful stupid, to war, my country, right or wrong, to fight the rebels, who have a very interesting collection of uniques.
Decisive battle. Battle one.
Starting with this guy.
Disappear.
Now, if you aren't using a lot of custom characters, this is a particularly, especially, in your first couple of playthroughs when you don't have a lot of custom characters unlocked, this is a pretty rough situation because your entire team has been taken away from you, including like knights like Aeneas that you've been relying on, or maybe even Gerardo. He's no longer in the party, of course. Your regular katana-wielding swordsman, Mega, he is no longer in the party as well, so you have 3 brand new people who are mostly using horrible weapons to fill out the ranks, and it's pretty rough. It's one of the reasons why, I never really tried to do SC% with MCO, and why I didn't really enjoy it as much, because once you get to this part, it's just a pain trying to fight with a dagger wielder and a fan wielder. So this challenge mode at least gives me access to all-time to a couple more weapons that are more interesting, like especially Nightmare. I really wish I could make Siegfried work. I maybe should try Keelik because that would give me another unique and specifically taunt usable character available.
Battle one. Fight.
Second interestingly dressed dancer.
Hurry up and disappear. You never stood a chance.
Although I kind of seem to be mocking or making fun of the dress or whatever, it actually goes along with things I talk about at other times as well. They do a really good job with the custom characters in the Rebellion of showing them as more They seem to be more normal clothing dressed than military dressed compared to many of the other characters. I have no idea who this is. Bart's. Just Bart's. That's fine. Nope, I did it too early. I'm going to have to give more orders. Too bad. One of the things that the little techniques that I use is delaying giving orders as long as possible, because whenever a character is involved in a combat like this, they lose all their orders. And again, here's another one. Kimika is dressed like a regular maid. She's literally a ninja maid. So it's like Jester, the court jesters, the maids, your basic citizens. These are the people who make up the leadership of the rebellion, as it were, or at least its main forces. Some of them are generic soldiers and stuff, but it's like Gerardo has had to recruit from the basic people to get his army. Of course, the one bad thing they do is they give too many evil voices to these rebels. Maybe that was also intentional, though, to create that dichotomy and make you wondering if the rebels are really as virtuous, as rebels are often portrayed to be. Is it a vilified revolution? Is it a righteous revolution? Your character isn't sure, and it could be part of that. But because all of these characters were involved in the combat, they all lost their orders I gave them. And since orders freeze the game, it makes it a little bit, easier to play, but it's bad for the speedrun because, everything is not progressing. So you need to, one of the other things I need to minimize, in addition to number of towers I take down and time I spend loading for battles, is times in the order menu. So if I can, even though I will arrive slightly later to places in real time, it makes up a lot of time if I don't have to freeze the game to give orders all over again. And if I do know that they're going to end up in a battle, I want to try to have as short a order as possible. I don't spend as much time, it's only a few seconds, so I don't spend as much time playing with that as I should, probably. Or as I would if I were a, really hardcore speedrunner. The kind of guys who are trying to milk every second out of a PB, especially in competitive categories. And, but again, it's not really necessary since nobody runs this against me. It's not a competitive category. It's something that pretty much I just do for fun. Other people have thought of it, but I need to sometime also finish up my my unlocking quest playthrough so I can start posting that along with guides to the few people who've shown a modicum of interest over the years, but I've never provided resources to really help them. Getting those done would help, but so I mean, why knock out every single little second? It isn't worth the effort to me, especially over a 3-hour game. Although I might be able to cut, a minute or two off if I was a little bit better at every single time with all of the things. Anyway, I've barely brushed on the fact that the Soulcalibur characters, the 23 Soulcalibur characters, this is a really horrible fight. Because of the separate, you can see how far it's pushing me back. And how it prevents me from getting my combo in. But there, nice. Nice ring out.
You never stood a chance.
But yeah, the 23, there are a few more than just 23 Soulcalibur characters available in, but certain ones can't be given, things like Olgadan and Abyss, and of course Night Terror. You can't give those weapon styles to your characters in the game. So the 23 that can, you can give to custom characters. They are all present as level 60 super bosses spread throughout the Chronicles. The first one is in Chronicle 4. The last one in Chronicle 19. And there are 1 to 3. Some of them don't have any. But in many of them, there's 1 to 3 characters. There are 2 here. There were 3 in the last one. The first time, there's 3. Now this one. What am I doing here? No, we're all doing 2. Now we're attacked in the middle of the night by rebels, supposedly. These are different than the normal rebels, though. It's a good time to start talking about the Soulcalibur characters, because Chronicle is unique for having the Soulcalibur characters involved in dialogue. Normally, when you start a battle with a Soulcalibur character, they give some line of dialogue, which is usually based around some of their lines from the game, either starting a battle or sometimes even ending a battle, hilariously. Or when you defeat them, they'll give one of their victory lines, kind of thing. Like Maxie says, "Aw, man, you messed up my hair." Which, although he says that when he wins, it's actually more appropriate for a death line when you think about it, or a defeat line, I guess. However, but that's just it. It's like one line of dialogue from them, then you start the combat. However, in this one, both Taki and Mitsurugi, after they start
Up and disappear.
talking,
It looks like
somebody else will add in dialogue, which seems to be talking to them. Especially in Taki's case. Abelia says, "Don't get in our way," and Taki accuses her of being possessed by the Dark Sword, which doesn't really pan out. She has nothing to do with Soul Edge, but definitely shows an interaction there. While the boss of the area talks after Mitsurugi is present, makes his line, which would seem to indicate that he's hired him as a... Yeah, actually, cool. I might be making a mistake here. We'll see if this bites me. This is a little complicated situation. Again, most of the time, but again, it's a small mistake because I haven't done this in so long. I've forgotten little small details, and we'll see if it ruins this or not, which again, I'm not too worried about. Whoops. Need to get used to this style again. Oh, God, of course. Ah, stop it. But normally I want to group them up like this, if at all possible. Oh, if I die, it's going to be especially bad. So much life steal, though. So normally I want to group them up as much as possible. Less loading time, so it takes overall less real time. However, this is a base race mission. There are 3 guys attacking my stronghold, and they are extremely weak, and my stronghold is strong. So even though I have to get through 2 fortresses with a few people, I can usually do it much faster than them regardless. However, it is pretty close, and so what I usually do on this scenario is, even though it hurts my real time, because it helps guarantee that I'll beat the base race, I do charge forward. As soon as a guy hits me, I kill him, charge forward, and just eat the loading times. Since I didn't this time, I don't know if I'll make it. I think I've tried it before and lost, but we're about to find out if that's the case. These rebels are incredibly aggressive today. They usually aren't that aggressive. Luckily, these are the weakest generics in the entire game. Except maybe for the first couple of missions where they do practically nothing and they're level 1. But even though they're relatively high level, their stats are actually deliberately very low. You saw how much damage I was doing, even though I'm only a comparable level to them. They just have... their stats are set. It's kind of interesting how the stats in the game work, because your characters are all consistent. In addition, the Soulcalibur characters are all entirely consistent. The Soulcalibur characters have the exact same stats any level 60 character would of this appropriate class. And there's no random growth in character stats. A same class at the same level will always have the exact same strength, vitality, agility, and max hit points. However, many of the other characters in the game, especially bosses and named characters, will have specialized stats. In fact, they'll be so specialized that even affects their stats here in the field. If you have infantry, it doesn't matter what level you are, you will always do 4 points of damage to all strongholds. And yet these infantry are only doing 2 points of damage a swing to my stronghold, which just shows how wimpy they are. Certain knights, I think, do extra damage, but for the most part, the AI doesn't have their people do any extra damage. It's very rare that it affects the stronghold damage, but it does happen on occasion. Now the moment of truth. 348. How much do I have left? 100 only. But I'm doing twice as much damage. Nope, I don't think twice is enough. So yeah, I should have moved forward. No, I'm doing 16, which is more than twice. So I think I'll just barely make it. Oh, so close. Okay, that's fine then. So I can do that as long as I'm moving forward. Good to know. It might save me a minute or two. Even on regular any percent. But because I haven't data mined the game myself, it's just things I've observed from gameplay. And so there are a couple of possibilities, for instance, in 10 is where I think about it the most, because you're doing chip damage to so many of the enemies in that main stronghold, and I can't tell if it's because their stats are just abnormally high for their level and character class. Their defenses are set to be really high, or if it's because it's actually the offense down is affecting me even when I'm defending the stronghold, even though it really shouldn't. Although Abilia dismisses her concerns, Tina, the coolest of our new soldiers that are forced upon us in Chronicle 13, notices something off about these supposed rebels. Particularly that they have a whole lot of Grandal paraphernalia and stuff, apparently, or something like that. And Abilia dismisses it, saying that, oh, well, yes, of course, they do believe in the right thing. It's sad that we've had to come to blows like this. But, I have no idea if this is going to be or not, because they've changed how they work a couple of times recently. I probably won't go that far, so I probably shouldn't be doing it, but, well. Nope, it's actually going to be fine that I did that. Because he decided to come this way. Sometimes the little things that change the scripts of how enemies act are so subtle. I change it in the smallest little ways, just by doing certain actions. I wanted to build this on the way through, but I lost track of it because I was moving the other people forward.
To final battle, fight.
All right. Oh. Will I make it? No, I'm not going to make it. That's bad. Okay. This may end up losing me the Chronicle. I forgot another small mistake since it's been so long. I should have built that up after going through to add another 100 health that the cavalry will have to go through.
Battle 1. Fight.
No, I'm not going to lose the thing. I have a solution. It's going to be slightly slower, but not a big deal. It'll still avoid the main thing I want to avoid. Again, I'll do better next time.
Are you ready?
Final battle. Fight.
Now, what's particularly noteworthy about this and this special, very difficult strategy I'm using that took me a long time to come up with is that there are certain points in the game where certain characters will join you that are optional. And the first instance is in Chronicle 2, although they don't join you immediately. But the two of Gerardo's soldiers that are charging forward and that I pretty much avoid because they go top and bottom and I go through the middle and they don't bother to run back to defend. Jinkai and Xiaoxin there. Whichever one you defeat first, if you defeat either of them, will join up about Chronicle 8, I think. And then we'll rejoin you as well in Chronicle 17, although they leave like your entire party pretty much after Chronicle 12. They rejoin at 17 as well, the same character, with some interesting dialogue. But if you don't fight either one, they don't join, you don't get that dialogue. So it's very convenient for the speedrun. It happens again in Chronicle 8, when you rescue the Halti soldiers. If you rescue Lirage or Canon, either or both will join you if you rescue them. Usually you're forced to rescue one or the other if you want to do it speedily, but you could actually avoid rescuing either. Aelion also joins you, and she joins you regardless. Even if you let her die, which is hilarious. But the other two are optional. And then the final optional set of characters who can join you is right here. There are two characters here, Feofan and Rudiger, who are the commanders, I suppose. And similar to Xiaoxin and Jinkai, whichever one you fight first will end up joining you. And because the enemies here are so much more aggressive than they are in number 2, and put your place in so much more danger, it's almost impossible to avoid fighting both of them. Almost impossible. For a long time, I thought it was impossible. However, relatively, it's been a while now because I haven't done it in so long. But just the last half dozen runs or so total that I've done of this have passed since I came up with this strategy that actually avoids fighting either of them. Because once again, just like the previous Chronicle, this is a base race, but this time it's the opposite. There are a lot more enemies who do a lot more damage to the main stronghold, although they're slow knights, so it takes a while to reach it, luckily for me. But that I have to deal with. And so I have to try and conquer their stronghold before they get mine. And it's really hard to do when the Rudiger there and Feofan, when my stronghold is so much weaker. It's a level 4 versus the level 5. However, I came up with a strat that avoids fighting even those two as well normally. I just have to defeat those first two that come and build this up to level 3, and then build that one up to level 3 as I pass through it before the two cavalry reach. And if I do that, I don't have to fight any of those guys. And so that saves a whole lot of battles that I otherwise would have to do. And almost as importantly, it means that I don't get Rudiger or Feofan. And when they join in the next Chronicle, they come with a whole lot of dialogue. Even as fast as I can skip through the dialogue, it's probably a good 10-15 seconds worth of dialogue to recruit either one of them. So skipping them is a huge, huge time saver. So even though I couldn't do it perfectly because I had to defeat the 2 cavalry, it's perfectly fine because I'll still skip Failfan Rudiger. It's just a small loss. It's not super big. But I built that thing up, and then I can avoid those battles entirely. So this is probably my least favorite fight in the game. Gerardo is the second character with Guardian Force, and he has a huge amount of hit points and a ridiculous defense. He doesn't do a huge amount of damage himself, but it takes forever to get through him, and because we can't stun him, it's just awful.
Battle 1. Fight.
It's almost impossible to beat him with a single character. If I get lucky, it'll take 2. Luckily, his weapon also damages himself, so he will eventually kill himself too. Some of his attacks are really prone to damaging him, but... this isn't too bad, although it isn't a huge amount of damage quickly. It's, losing characters loses the most time, so... and again, it always takes time. Kunai is not bad for him, actually. Because even though you're pretty much doing chip damage, it does a lot of hits because of the way it interacts with the... and I restore health over time with this weapon while he is constantly killing himself. Oh my, I might actually... this might be perfect. And she's only level 18 assassin. No character's dead. Amazing. Oh, that is so good. My word. That might be gold split on my any percent.
But you do not yet know where to direct that power.
Even with the extra fights.
Now, your strength is controlled by others. Think for a moment. For whom do you wield your power? For what purpose? And against whom? You must learn to control that strength yourself. Otherwise, you will never become a true warrior.
Oh my. What a sudden death end. And yes, that was Soul Edge, too, which you've seen a lot of for my characters already. That was, it's hard to know since they haven't shown him before, but that was Emperor Strife who came and suddenly killed General Gerardo. One of the things we skip, although it doesn't matter again since the, since we're skipping dialogue so quickly, but one of the dialogues that we skip is the worst, one of the worst translated things in the game, where Tina says that General Gerardo killed the Emperor, even though it was the exact opposite. I don't know if it is supposed to be he tried to kill it, or it's because the Emperor killed Gerardo rather than Gerardo killing the Emperor. Or because he rebelled and therefore was implied to have been trying to kill the Emperor. I don't know. It's just... was obviously a horrible mistranslation. There are some interesting ones here, which I haven't dwelt too much on. But Glam is an example. Glam is supposed to be Gram, the Sword of Grief, which is a legendary evil blade from, I believe, Germanic mythology, or Middle European epic tales.
Decisive battle.
But because of English and, you know, just that's, if you're familiar with Japanese culture, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But they do not have an R sound or an L sound. They have a single sound, which is right in between them. And so they always have difficulty translating words into Japanese and back, especially into Japanese and back again, becomes very interesting with L's and R's. So you'll see that a lot. That's why they say English, because sometimes that's how they effectively pronounce it when they try to say it, because they don't know the difference between L's and R's. And that's a cultural thing. There are similar sounds in their language that sound exactly the same to us. Although for theirs, it's more focused on vowels, especially long vowels with O's and U's. There's very slight intonation difference, which you can tell if you're very used to. You hear it mostly in their singing, because for whatever reason, and this is the thing with the French language too, American English especially can afford to get really lazy with lyrics in the language. We're more prone to shortening words. But in both French and Japanese, when they sing in their lyrics in their language, they tend to overpronounce every single syllable. And that applies to things that in casual language become double vowels that are almost, that in normal conversation would sound like a single vowel to us. So, you know, as much as we make fun of them, we have as big of a problem going into with the other way as well, of course. I am going way too far there. But I'll get to some more egregious examples of terrible English later, though, because some of the ones here are hilariously bad. This one's kind of a good one. This is the only known mission of Down Lose here in the Zoss place. Zoss established himself as a brand new character in Soulcalibur 3 and became a popular and pretty nasty, actually was really the main bad guy of, he's the big bad of the game, really. Not the final boss, you know, because Abyss is him with Soul Edge and Soulcalibur both taking him over into one combined evil being. Night Terror fully unleashed, a totally different thing altogether. And possibly not canon. But his position here is in the very unique Down Lose, which is exactly what it says on the tin, as weird as it sounds. If you fall down, you lose. It's not just you lose either. If you land on the ground, you get shot up into the air by a bomb and lose all your health. And that's the end. And so it's an incredibly difficult fight, one of the more infamous ones among most people, because his AI is one of the cruelly designed ones where he takes full advantage of it. He's programmed to use attacks that are quick, difficult to avoid, and don't do a lot of damage, but simply do a small amount of knockback, because that will instantly win him the game. And because of the decent reach of his scythe, it's really, and its combined speed being better than most other long weapons, makes it really hard to get around properly. But for some reason, he has no idea what to do with the shoulder charge, so I usually make a big joke of him by just shoulder charging him into the ground. Bam, he's gone. But bit of a problem in your first casual playthrough when you don't know the goodness of the katana, and or you don't have access to it, because you have to have a samurai or a swordmaster by this point to cheese that easily. And guess what? Very hard to do that in your first playthrough. Usually need 2 or 3 before you get to samurai and swordmaster. Up here is another duo battle of Talim and Yun Seong in a whirlwind, and they are as big of a pain. And 16 is absolutely my least favorite of all of the Chronicles, mostly because we're stuck with 3 people. But especially on an SC% speedrun or a casual playthrough where I'm trying to 100% everything, it's especially bad because it's really hard to take down these super difficult fights. 3 Soulcalibur characters. There are as many Soulcalibur characters as there are people in your party, and it's the only place you get that. And they don't really give a good reason why. Because I mentioned it many times during my runs, I've had people in YouTube comments and the chat comment on it and give theories, which are pretty good ones. Some people have mentioned that it's likely to emulate the fact that since we just wiped out the rebels and now, oh yeah, storyline-wise, we defeated Gerardo. He was killed by Strife. We saw that in the cutscene, and then
Your footwork is pathetic. It's a joke.
wow, I've never actually heard that dancer line before. Have I really never had a male? I almost never use male dancers to begin with, but that was, I can't believe I've never had one with that voice. That was pretty awesome. Anyway, even we're blue now because Grandal is red and we are rebelling against Grandal. Who'd have thunk? I can't remember if I had a good strat for this or not. I think I did, yes. I'm not doing it now, though. Oh, well, I'll save it for next time. Yeah, she can earn... Galuf's almost caught up with her. I was able to pull the 1 away using this strategy, which I forgot about because it's fairly recent development as well, but oh well.
Battle 1. Fight.
Did I do it? Did I do it?
Ring out. Fight.
Did I do it?
We're also fighting super elites now, too. These characters are some of the ones with the most ridiculously high stats that you can tell, and they're ridiculously high level, too, compared to what we've been fighting before. But, yeah, so after the death of Gerardo, this affected us so much that we decided, you know what? We were big idiots for choosing to follow Strife and rebel against Gerardo and cause his death, so we're going to take up his cause and lead the rebellion. And that's what the big dialogue with the recruit you get from the previous one is all about. They survived the battle and they're going to avenge Gerardo, and they see you marching the same direction and they're like, you can't be serious. You just destroyed our rebel forces and now you think you're going to rebel too? And we're like, well, yeah. Although you don't say anything, of course. All the dialogue is delivered by your followers instead, since you're a silent protagonist. But yeah, we just wiped out the rebels. Now we decide, nah, we're going to lead the rebels instead. So, but to emulate the fact that we have, you know, Abilia leaves. She doesn't join the rebellion. Important foreshadowing there. Chekhov's gun and all that. Chekhov's gunman, rather. But probably the majority of the forces don't follow us, and so having only 3 characters here was likely intended to emulate that. I just wish that there was something in the game to really, you know, let you know the implication, because having 3 characters is just so painful, especially since you're, you know, the last time we had 3 characters, your main fortresses had like 100 hit points, and your level 3s probably had 200, your level 2s 150, and your big one had 400 maybe. Probably closer to 300. Now, we have 3 characters fight through 300, and it takes forever. Just utterly painful. And it gets even worse when you're on SC% and you're trying to fight, you know, 2 Soulcalibur characters at once, and you only have 3 characters to spare total. So you're losing 33% of your time to get 1 character there, and it's possible that 1 character might get killed because of fighting 2 Soulcalibur characters in a nasty whirlwind, because that's one of the, probably the second worst actual mission of all of the Soulcalibur characters in the entire game. Such a pain. This is another, I'm glad that none of them have Separate, because Separate is also really bad. This is a bad Separate. Not as bad as Brynhild in Mission 13, but oh god, she's off to a good start. Oh! Losing a character here is painful too. Happens often enough. That's actually Bart's first death, though, which isn't bad. I mean, I've been losing my other characters horribly. Oh my, might I lose all three? Wow! Wow, this is awful! Goodness. Gotta give me plenty of time save on my next run, but how does that reach with the pushback? Oh my word. Oh my word, yeah, she just killed us all. We have to restart the whole Chronicle. She is really annoying character. She's really the final boss of this mission. The last boss is actually one of the easiest stupid parts of this Chronicle, but even so. And again, that's why 3 characters is so bad too. Though I think this might be the first time I've ever lost all 3 here, which is really incredible because I've never even lost all 3 on an SCO when my choices here that I'm dealing with are my main character. Whoops. I forgot that it asks for a save even though you lost. Great. Your choices are your main character, and then I have a kunai wielder, who is not really great on separate either, and then probably I'm using the fan. That's, I think, my third in MCO. Well, we're going to get a little bit of extra experience. And hopefully I won't let ordinary people... Well, it was Mei Ling. It was an elite character who beat up Bart so much.
Decisive battle. The old battle 1. Fight.
Let's settle this.
Battle 2. Fight.
Hurry up and disappear.
Battle 3. Fight.
Hurry up and disappear.
In to win.
Decisive battle. one, fight.
Hurry up and disappear. Okay, that was easy.
Well, this time around I can do the trick strat. Main thing is here, I do not want to take a
Decisive
lot of
battle.
damage on my main. It's almost like having a weak dancer and being able to defeat him made Hitomi there extremely
Fight.
confident.
Hurry up and disappear.
Battle 2, fight.
That is way too long of a charge up, is what that is.
Okay, that was easy.
Bart's was the easiest character to do because they actually have a skin for him in Dissidia, apparently, that is his dancer. So looking for pictures of his dancer set, I didn't have to go off of sprite work like I usually do when trying to do my favorite Final Fantasy characters. I was able to use a full model. I don't have quite the right shirt for it, but it's good enough. And it's closer than some of them. Ta-da! Going. And so that's the horse trick strat that lets me get rid of the horseman there, the samurai. Yukina is her name.
Final battle, fight.
Ooch. Samurai, bad. One problem with this is that it is very open to being guard impact. The eye is really good at that. It's one of the few that is. It's about the only disadvantage to this samurai style. Man, that's bad. I should be able to res him in the one right nearby, though. No, unfortunately, Yukina's the one I'm fighting here. The horseman was the other one. That's unfortunate. The biggest problem with Barbarian is the same one with the Dancer. They are extremely fragile. They actually have a better, at level 1 at least, a better attack power than the Assassin, which is one of the highest class
Final
offensive classes in the game. But
ring out.
take that.
It was a decent match.
Was it? Considering she was already half dead? Okay, after I beat that down, hopefully I'll do it in time. So I'll be able to build up. No, I don't think I am. Well, luckily, she's cavalry. Feng Lin is the one on the horse. She's the one I'd rather fight, but I can't get Yukina away. Whoever is in there is the one you can't get away, so it just happens to be her, so. Okay. Long... Nope, that's wrong. That's through another place that hasn't been destroyed yet. Hopefully I'll make it through before that gets taken down. 4 damage. She's doing more damage than she should because she's so powerful. They're supposed to only do 3 points of damage with cavalry. And again, your level does not affect that. That is internal stats that they program. No matter what class you are, no matter what your attack power is, no matter what level you are, you never do different amounts of damage. I might not make it, so that's going to leave me... well, more easy time save next time. This might be closer to a 330 run than I thought it would. He's gonna chase me down, even though I actually did make it through, but she's gonna be able to chase me down since she's cavalry. I'm gonna fight her after all, and with a character I'd rather not fight her with. Of course, losing a 12-minute Chronicle near the end of it will always ruin your time. Just more time saved for the next run, though. It's going to be absurdly huge. Luckily, Chinese Blade is pretty awful, even if they do have the AI is really good with a guard impact into lift. Other than the, I think personally that Soulcalibur 3 has the worst AI, like the most precise AI in the entire series for what they want to do. Nope, she's gonna arrive in time to help beat it down, so at least that. The, by which I mean, I'm not sure if it's some other bug or if it was programmed in to overcompensate for the fact that they realized in testing that the AI was bad with certain movesets, but they are ridiculously good at perfect blocking and perfect guard impacting and all that. Will do it at will, which is one of the other reasons why when I'm speedrunning this, I only want to use the most abusable and reliable moves because, you know, seeing even a good one, you know, like this Nightmare 8-way run technique. They will punish it severely if they so choose, and they will choose a lot, especially on the higher levels. I might make Barbarian my second class going forward so that they have more access to fights and experience, because they need it more badly. More badly, they need it more. I say they need it badly and need it more at the same time, and so it turned into more badly. Against separation, when I can't do the combo nearly as reliably, just that charging forward slide attack is decent. Okay. Oof. Close to 3 hours. On a normal any percent, I would be finishing up Chronicle 19 by now.
Decisive battle. Battle 1. Fight.
Disappear. See that?
Up to level 45. Only one loss. Which was the last attempt for him, was the his thing. So Tina comes to a brilliant conclusion that the rebels in Chronicle 14 who had surrounded us in the middle of the night somehow out of nowhere and were trying to kill us were not actually rebels at all. No, they were in fact dressed as rebels, but they were agents sent by the Emperor because he knew that he would just betray us. Now this Chronicle has a interesting surprise twist. The forces that we're fighting against are all of our former comrades. They've been, when they realize that we're leading the rebel force and are coming and they're told to defend, you know, against us, they're like, no, we love our old commander. We won't fight against them. And so the new commander in charge of this garrison says, here, presents from the Emperor. Here are these pieces of metal. Like, what are we supposed to do with these? And then they get zombified by the pieces of soul edge that they get given. So we free them from being zombies by beating them about the head and shoulders, of course. Every one of the characters you defeat will rejoin your party after the battle is over, which is very nice and convenient. Unfortunately, in the speedrun, we don't have time to beat anybody but Mega, who just happens to be along the quickest path. So even in MCO, where it might be desirable to get better characters, the only one that's really worth getting is Mega because he happens to get in your way. Other unique things about this very unique Chronicle is that it is the only one where in an any percent run we fight the Soulcalibur characters because they just happen to be in the path of this quickest route right here. We fight a total of 3 enemies. We could take the northern route as well. It is, although I don't think we have a start position quite as close. It looks comparable in size, maybe even a little shorter, but I think the buildings are bigger and we would end up fighting more enemies because they're all in that section. So here's Sophitia. I love her secondary outfit more than her first. She's one of the few where I really, really like her secondary outfit. Most of them are kind of joke outfits, which are funny, which is fine. But The ones that aren't considered jokes, I generally just like less, but this one is good. Her first one, they took all the blue color out of her usual dress while keeping it more or less the same, which essentially makes it look like she's fighting in a shift, you know, a medieval sleeping dress underwear that, although it was over other undergarments, it was considered underwear. You weren't supposed to show it. But that's literally what it looks like she's wearing without the blue highlights. There's a little bit of like extra armor tossed on, but it's a tiny amount, like a single breastplate for some reason, like plate over one of her breasts rather than the full thing, which is ridiculous. Her green hair suit. I just don't like her outfit in this one compared to when she has the blue mini skirt at least, and sometimes blue epaulets and highlights on the upper dress. Makes it look. So she has the more blue color scheme there. Despite the split in her skirt, it's a less revealing outfit, more practical looking, and just overall better. Plus her hairstyle's kind of neat. She's got an almost Princess Leia vibe going on there. Next up is Tira, who has a lot less stripperific outfit in hers. It actually, her secondary outfit, I think, is supposed to be a joke outfit. Makes her look kind of like a clown. Very good fight there. Sometimes I have a lot of trouble with either Mega or Sophia. They both can be a pain, but they were very nice to me. We'll see if Tira is going to be equally nice. Tira is the only one of the characters who is available to 2 classes with her style. As you may have noted by math, each of the 12 regular classes, not Swordmaster, who gets all the regular weapons but no Soulcalibur weapons, has access to 2 Soulcalibur styles. But there are only 23 available and not 24. So to make up the 24th, they give Tira to both Thief and Assassin. Naturally, when you fight her, she's an Assassin class because it matches both her actual personality training and style, etc. better, and it's a lot higher level and more powerful than the Thief. Thief is one of the 6 basic classes, while Assassin is the 3rd tier of the 2nd tier of unlockables, the 3rd tier total, because your first 6 are on the bottom tier. Then your first 2 unlockables are Pirate and Gladiator, that are both decent. Then your next set are Sage and Assassin. The Sage's only problem being that it's a better defensive focus, so it's really tough, but not a lot of attack power, which actually tends to be the most important thing. And then after that, you get the Knight and the Samurai in the top tier. And then, of course, ultimate tier is your Swordmaster, one and only, which you can only unlock after leveling every other class to like level 30. At some point or other. You don't have to do it in the same single playthrough of the Chronicle, because you can only have 10 custom characters anyway, so you couldn't do all 12 at once. But it keeps track of which ones you've already raised to 30 as you unlock all of those. But this is our second tall character. We encountered the first one way back in Chronicle 4. Now we deal with even though he's from a different country, practically his brother. He has a similar name, Aeolus, compared to Arion, who was the first guy. And again, almost the exact same helmet, just colored differently. Looks almost exactly the same. Just, again, for whatever reason, just happens to be exceptionally tall, taller than all normal sprites. Aeneas, who is the first character who joins you and is the only one available besides your custom ones during the tutorial, will speak for the party, as it were, and so he'll end up automatically joining us regardless of whether we defeat him, similar to Elion, who also rejoins us at the beginning of this Chronicle after leaving back in 12.
Battle 1. Fight.
But, man, stop being so aggressive. You're not supposed to. This was such a good Chronicle until then. Oh well. This is very unusual, and he especially is usually a very pathetic boss, but he decided that it's his day to be a hero and all that. Oh my word. Seriously? Again, they just decide to, and they do whatever they want. And this is much worse than any other Soulcalibur when it comes to deciding to do those things. And there's nothing I can do about it, really. I've done more than 100 runs of this, and I've maybe lost 2 characters total, and now he's decided to take out 2 in one playthrough.
Fight.
Did I do it?
Stop it already. Goodness. It's like he's forgotten that he's not supposed to attack continually because he's unblockable and you can't do anything about it.
It looks like I won today, but who knows what'll happen next time?
Goodness, absolute gracious. That was insane. All right, 3 Chronicles to go. Here is the last of our unstoppable, our Guardian Force, which makes them unstoppable. Okay, let's see if I can do this right. Second time I'm going to swap my unit type to, try and this time what I'm trying to do is I'm relying on the high speed to avoid enemies and the inability to take down buildings in order to bait at least a few of the enemies into attacking me and then not being able to reach me. Time. Let's see. They're actually going to turn down and start down the south road. So even though it looks like I'm about to fight them,
Fate. Final battle. Fight.
so Abilia, who is one of the ultimate kinds of lawful stupid, my country right or wrong style characters, will not
Ring out.
show mercy to any enemy of Grandal, even if it's us, her best friend, rival, implied love interest.
Is mine.
Very excited, Lena. That's the samurai quote. Because each class has a specific quote for each of the 4 voices, regardless of alignment. It's one that's unaffected by alignment. I might have spent too much time playing there, so I might have to do one extra fight. Depending on if I can get them moving out of here enough. This is one of the...
Final battle.
Not a very big fight or super duper bad, but a little bit complicated with the movement of these soldiers that's hard to optimize.
Ring
It'll be interesting to see how my different classes affect the final Chronicle the most. Nope. Darn. Not nearly enough time. Happened instantly. I was hoping that running back through the thing again, I could convince one more character. Oh, it's Baldwin. The mistake. Level 3 Baldwin. Even the generics now are in their mid-20s, and they're supposed to be way low level. But there's a level 3 unique guy named Baldwin. So this is just entirely theory on my part, but it seems to make logical sense. Because during the first time you fight Abelia, way back in Chronicle 1, she has 2 named characters in her arsenal. Notice and Ishtar. And yeah, I'm going to have to deal with him. Much as I didn't want to. And so they're uniques, unique designs and stuff. And they return in this, leveled up to mid-30s. Still lower than all the other named guys, who seem to be, starting in Chronicles 16, a group of elite. Here's Notice, for instance. And Notice and Ishtar look exactly the same as they did, so they're obviously the same people. Ishtar even gets a line at the start of the next Chronicle. Goodness, Notice, stop it.
It looks like I won today, but who knows what'll happen next time.
And so I expect that Baldwin was an error, some sort of error in the coding. They either created, I believe that he was originally created to be another one of Abelia's troops, but perhaps they decided that 3 unique troops was too many for her to have, because after all, you only get 3 characters during it total, so why on earth should she have 4 unique characters, including herself, when you only get 3 total? So they removed Baldwin. But they decided they wanted him here to match up with the greater number of forces and all that. So they brought him back and put him in here. But because of, I'm not sure quite how they do the coding for characters, if each individual character is an entirely separately created entity and, you know, it's programmed to load them into the map, or if individual units who have the same name and appearance are the same in the code, and then they come in and they're programmed to be a specific level or whatever. Or, you know, the script levels them up when they enter the map or something like that. You know, there's, I played a little bit with coding and programming, and so I know the general way that those kinds of things work. The former is most likely. It's usual that they have, even though they're the same character, they're technically totally different in the data. And it's, you know, this is Ishtar A, this is Ishtar B, for instance. You know, the 4 times you fight Luna are Luna 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're 4 separate files, all named Luna, in the data of characters that would be there. But regardless, either way, there is obviously an error in turning Baldwin into a proper level character. Either they pulled the wrong Baldwin because the first one, you know, was removed and so doesn't actually exist, or because he was removed, he doesn't get leveled up properly the way he should. Regardless, the actual outcome is the same. Just it ends up being the case that Baldwin is a level 3 character when they should be in their mid-30s. Now, I haven't talked about this before, but part of the reason I'm cavalry here is to properly do a plug technique. And I'm going to be doing it again here once they take that northern stronghold. because the enemy, you cannot move past an enemy who's attacking your stronghold, though it doesn't require you to stay inside the stronghold. I'll go ahead and do it now. And the AI is not programmed to start battle. Now, you may have noticed when my strongholds come under attack, once I deem a sufficient number of them are attacking my stronghold, I will just initiate the combat automatically. However, the AI is not programmed to do that. Even though they really desperately want to get past or kill my unit or defend their stronghold, they cannot initiate the combat. They have to wait until I conquer the stronghold or move before they can do anything. They're stuck there waiting for the outcome. If something else were to trigger to have them go out the other way, they would and could, but they just can't start the battle. So I use this plug as a means of preempting them, preventing them from getting to me.
I will not lose against a traitor.
Even though I lose a bit of time that I could spend on,
Battle 1.
you know, destroying the stronghold, it usually works out because it's the alternative is he is pretty awful against Abilia. Abilia is the easiest of the Guardian forces. She has the lowest stats. Even though she doesn't do damage when she attacks, she does take chip damage from blocking, so...
Battle 2. Fight.
The main reason I don't want my main character to fight, though, is because this is one of the areas I mentioned very briefly way back at the start that even though there's only ever one victory condition, there are multiple loss conditions. Losing all your characters, although they will regenerate, as we saw in Chronicles 16, losing them all at once will cause you to lose the Chronicle. And losing your main stronghold always loses. And sometimes there are other loss objectives as well, like losing 3 or more Haltese characters in Chronicle 8. And in this Chronicle, as well as in Chronicle 14, although it isn't as big a deal because everyone's weak, and Chronicle 20, losing your main character automatically loses the Chronicle. So I don't want my main character involved with any of these people because she could be easily killed. Even though they don't have the glow, they also have Guardian Force. So it's actually easier and quicker to kill myself than to try and beat through them. Because the only thing I actually have to do in this Chronicle to win is defeat Abilia. This is literally an assassination battle. Usually it's taking the main stronghold, but there's usually only the last person left, so it kind of doesn't matter. You win the last battle, take the stronghold, it's the same thing. But this one, rather than taking the stronghold, all I have to do is defeat Abilia. So I sacrifice the rest of the characters. Losing one to her doesn't really matter much. I would use 2 characters if I could more reliably... when I've tried with like only 2 characters just in case, that's when she tends to beat me and then everything goes out the window because I don't have any units that can fill in. And next time I'll have to defeat her last. She's only first because of a cutscene. Otherwise, the enemy boss will almost always be the last person you fight. Whoever they designate as the boss of the group. Alright. Longest overall Chronicle in the game. Though it doesn't tend to take as long as Chronicle 16, even when I don't die and mess up 16, because of just the fact that you can avoid so much and you have 5 characters. If you're trying to 100% this, it is far and away the longest, most difficult level. But especially on any percent, I can just skip right through it, and it's a piece of cake. I only have to take 4 strongholds besides the main one, which is like a third of all the strongholds here, maybe less. Yeah, less. There are 14 enemy strongholds. I only have to take 4. Well, 5 including the main one, so a third. A little bit more than a third of them, about 35%. Regardless, very, very few. Comparatively. And really only a handful of guys. There aren't nearly as many enemies as you'd expect, and 4 of them are generics, all clustered here in front of this big building. For bonus points, keep an eye, there are 4 here. Remember that. Our final Soulcalibur character is here, Nightmare, in this poison. And he is a super disappointing final Soulcalibur, final boss, as it were, of the Soulcalibur characters. Because, as we've noted from my own Nightmare character, Barbarians tend to be pretty fragile. They're actually a really weak class. They do a lot of damage. They're one of the best starting classes, but the starting classes are all weak, so that doesn't give them that many props. I mean, they're a good class to be your first class that you beat the game with, fine, before you unlock the other classes. But seriously, compared to Knights and Samurai, they lag pretty far behind. So having the last person be Nightmare, a Barbarian, is a little bit anticlimactic. Plus, he doesn't even have a good mission. It's poison, which even though it's the most powerful poison effect in the game, it still is almost negligible, especially compared to the damage the Nightmare does himself. If you aren't killing Nightmare quick enough, he's going to kill you himself, because that means he's beating on you instead of vice versa. And because even at level 60, he only has just over 400 hit points. He goes down fast. So it's just like all in all disappointing. If they gave him some sort of ridiculously difficult mission, or if they had chosen to make Nightmare a knight instead of a barbarian, because that would kind of fit in with the lore better, even if he's an evil knight. He was known as the Azure Knight. But it's one of the things I talk about sometimes, especially during lulls when I've talked about just about everything else, is my critiques of the way they distributed the classes of the Soulcalibur characters. There's definitely a logic to how they did it. No denying that. But for my part, I think the logic is a little bit flawed and could have been improved on, is basically how I would consider it. Because the first class and their first weapon is the Barbarian with the Iron Sword, which is modeled a little bit after Siegfried and Nightmare, but most especially Nightmare. As we can see, with it having Soul Edge and Emperor Strife himself, final boss, having access to that Soul Edge weapon and the Iron Sword skill, you know, it's a pseudo Nightmare. So having Nightmare as the class equivalent of that makes sense. The only problem is they didn't follow that logic everywhere. The other Barbarian, Astaroth, is perfectly fine. The monks, Archelic, and Maxi, perfectly fine. The dancers are Xianghua and Voldo, which definitely has a sense at least. Because Xianghua is basically considered a sword dancer. However, the weapon that is based on Xianghua's, the Chinese blade, belongs to the Sage, which would kind of be an acceptable class for Xianghua as well, but I'm fine with her in Dancer. Because there aren't too many other weapons that can use the Dancer. I just wish they had given Chinese blade to Dancer at the very least. Come on.
I will fight you again anytime you like.
Instead, the sages they gave are Cassandra and Sophitia. Both of the sword and shield users are sages. Even though the class whose primary weapon is sword and shield is gladiator. They're the ones who use it by default, yet they don't have either of the sword and shield users there. At least sword and shield is available to the sage, although that means they get all three of the sword and shield users. Knight doesn't use sword and shield, since it's kind of, more Roman gladiator sword and shield. That's not entirely egregious, not super terrible. I understand at least. But gladiator, who has that, only has the one and nobody else. The gladiator weapons are totally unrelated to the to their Soulcalibur types. It's Rock and Sungmina. Rock is especially the one that I really question because, it's kind of his lore. He's gladiator style fighting in arenas in most of the time when you encounter him in the story mode, but it's really not a gladiator type weapon style. Sungmina, you don't have much else place to put her, so that's fine, even though there's no related weapon.
That was easy.
She also has a weapon that really doesn't have anything based on it. The closest is technically either the staff, which they make more mystic staff, so it's, even though she's close to Keelik, she isn't really close to the staff style, and maybe the lance, although the lance is although it has some of her techniques, it's actually one of the most unique of them, so. Notice there are only 3 here now. Where'd the other guy go? He ran inside there. There's 2 enemies in the fortress now instead of 1. Don't know why, but one of them is programmed to retreat when you start advancing through the city, no matter where you're advancing from, whether you all come from the south, whether you split up or whatever. Just for some reason, one of them at one point is programmed just to fall back in to defend the stronghold. It's one of the weirdest scripts in this game.
Fight.
So one of the other ones that is a little weird that I would play around with is Ivy, who is a pirate, which she basically is only because she's Cervantes' daughter, because obviously the pirate class exists 100% because of Cervantes. And so they didn't really feel a better place for her or anybody else who could be a pirate, so they shuffled her into the pirate section. Okay, whatever.
Battle 1. Fight.
And the final one that feels a little out of place to me is Raphael in the Knight.
Disappear.
That one is one of the very weirdest. I kind of understand I think they give the rapier style to the knight because in this time period, knights are no longer actually heavy plate mail wearing, lance wielding, sword and shield hiding behind tank types that they were throughout the Middle Ages. Nobility and therefore gentlemen like knights and who are trained in many arts, including swordsmanship, are being trained in fencing style moves. So having that connection is kind of fridge brilliance in a way, but it just doesn't thematically fit really with the fantasy style classes that the game uses otherwise. It sacrifices the fantasy aspect to go into a weird dip into realism. So even though I can understand it, I don't really like it. So the way I would have chosen to distribute those classes is to take Barbarian, Astaroth is fine, and then Rock. And then you get both of the heavy hitters, yes, but they are very clearly Barbarian-style characters. I mean, it's all... Hey, I'm fine. Welcome to the stream, Saliamos. Nice to have a new commenter here for a bit. So Barbarian, I put Rock and Nightmare. I'd move Nightmare over to Knight. Yep, I do have the FF5 crew. I'm actually doing a brand new route, or not really route, a brand new category that's a challenge category, hence why my time is so big, because I'm struggling a little bit with it. But I'm calling it UWC for unique weapon and class. I can only have one of each character class, no Swordmasters, and I cannot repeat any things. There's a command for it.
Decisive battle.
So it's a little bit of a compromise between a real challenge mode of main character only, where I'm forced to use the party members that are available, so I'm in a challenge mode, but I also still get to customize the characters. I was just thinking about it, and I thought this would be more fun than MCO. One of the reasons why I haven't done more with MCO is that making the characters is half the fun of the run anyway, and so when I only get to make one, it makes it a lot less fun. And plus, some of them are just so awful, it's a pain to play.
Must move on.
Oh yes, very much so. I have spent so many thousands of hours into this game, and this game mode in particular. So I decided to have all different classes, and I figured that Final Fantasy V characters were an excellent place to start with the custom characters for that, because of the fact that they are used to changing classes and stuff, and therefore have models for the kinds of classes I can use. I had to make some... naturally, because Soulcalibur 3 doesn't have the best customization in appearances, I had to make some concessions to how they look, but... Alright, now we all changed to Infantry. Bart's is actually really nice for a dancer, even though I usually just... I'm prejudiced towards having female dancers myself. It's more enjoyable for me. But Bart's is a good lead male dancer because he actually has a dancer outfit that is not only, present, it's very visible. Because apparently he had a Dissidia skin of him in his dancer role. It's very easy to find pictures to create off of. I went with a Berserker for the Barbarian, since there isn't really a Barbarian class, which unfortunately they all have like wolf heads, wolf hats, which don't exist in Soulcalibur 3, so I just went with a basic Viking Barbarian helmet. But otherwise just based what I could on the sprites of the characters. And there are conveniently 5 characters too, for the 5 characters of FF5. Chryle is actually an assassin, although I've made her look like a ninja. Because the 5th weapon I've chosen, I actually have made some changes over the course of the run. Because my 2 main ones are, of course, Dancer with Xianghua and Samurai with the Katana. I did pick a Knight class. I was planning to use Soul of Siegfried because it has some good moves, but I'm not very good with them, and I just couldn't make them work, so I swapped over to Iron Sword, which isn't the best overall class, but it's decent enough. It has one really reliable move, and I can still use it with Knight, so I'm keeping Knight as my 4th slot. 3rd is Barbarian with Soul of Nightmare because it has one pretty good move. Yeah, and for the 5th slot, I have a couple of really good moves I'm good with the kunai that the computer can't handle. So kunai normally belongs to ninja, but because assassins can also use kunai and they're much more powerful, I went with assassin instead. But since there isn't an assassin in Final Fantasy V, I just let Chryle dress as a ninja. Yep. There are just a couple of moves that I spam with kunai. One is really, really difficult to use, but really powerful. And if you rely on that alone, it can be troublesome, but it's their running forward kick attack. Of course, if you run too far, then they go into the slide instead. But the triple kick, if you can aim it right, knocks them down. They can't block it the second hit, and it does a huge amount of damage. However, the somersault backup using B plus K works pretty well as a secondary. So that's what we rely on as our backup. Kind of depends by what kind of bugs do you mean. There are definitely some... there's nothing super duper bad, though it's definitely got some troubled programming. I've had some weird things happen that mostly just visual bugs. Like I've had characters fall out of the ring and briefly go upside down or even stand. Oh, he was the one taking damage. That's bad. Oh well. The biggest bug, and the one that most people hear about, has nothing to do with competitive play. It's based around saving. If you try to delete the save data, everything that was added before the Soulcalibur 3 becomes corrupt, including the Soulcalibur 3 data itself, apparently. Or not the Soulcalibur 3 data itself. There must be special conditions, because I've deleted my data to do brand new things several times. But if you try to delete anything on before Soulcalibur 3 on your on the data, it will cause the data to become corrupt. And there's a little bit of a problem with just the whole reason that my speedrun works so well is that I'm able to abuse faulty programming in the AI movesets. And because there are so many of them, there are certain times that they don't quite work properly, but I don't think that any of them should affect competitive play. Yeah, I've never been able to do a fully never get them out of it wall combo, that's for certain.
Did I do it? So slow. Did I do it? You can't. Did I do it? Did I do it?
This is over.
Did I do it? You can't. Did I do it?
That's it. Okay, finally. Whew. Pretty rough for a first run. But, yeah, they are super reliable. Super duper good for ringing characters out. Yep. As I say, this is a brand new category that's kind of just more of a challenge one. With the normal run, I rock with 4 Swordmasters with Katana, and then the Dancer, because Spin to Win is so overpowered as well. But the shoulder charge, especially into easy ring outs like that, is a good is a very good reliable setup. And since they're Swordmasters, being low level doesn't hurt them much.
Emperor died. Both the evil blade and the holy blade disappeared into darkness. The empire collapsed, and the people were left only with devastated lands and the memories of the terrible war. The people, however, eventually forgot the hardships. They rebuilt the razed villages and sowed new seeds upon the destroyed fields.
The one problem with all the characters being generic. Oh wait, first here comes the most awesome statue in the world.
The tales of the great ones who
Animatronic statues in medieval times. The best thing about using a dancer as my main character. Yeah. As far as I know, that only happens if you're using Soul of Xianghua as your style. I don't know why, but it's such an awesome ending to every run.
The legend will never die.
Yep.
Soulcalibur 3.
Well, thanks for watching the end of this. This will be going up on YouTube within the next 36-ish hours, whatever, whenever I get around to that. But that's going to be it for me today.
Soulcalibur 3.
Thanks for watching, and expect to see a bunch more of this in the near future.